All right. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is David Patrick Carey with Church of the Eternal Logos, and I am joined by the author and personal friend, Rachel Wilson. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Doing great. I'm excited for our conversation today. The interwebs, particularly X, has been dominated about some conversation concerning the Christ pill versus the red pill. And we've talked about before, and I did a stream with Dyer talking a little bit about the red pill. And I think it's going to be a fruitful conversation. I think we can both agree there's been a little bit of a miscommunication between both parties. And I think hopefully what we can offer today is a little bit of a bridge between the two and demonstrate how they're not exactly alternatives to each other. There's much that overlaps between the two.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people say that like the red pill is just like male feminism. And I understand where that comes from and why people would think that, but I think there's more to it than that. And a lot of people who talk about the red pill probably don't know really that much about it. They may see some clips of the Tate brothers, especially from several years ago when they were saying the more crazy stuff about like how to take someone's virginity and some awful things like that. Or maybe they see some cringy game coaches, dating coaches who are very grifty and they're like, oh, this is the red pill. It's just about how to get in chicks' pants. But I will say there's a couple of people on the red pill side that I do have a lot of respect for their work and that I think their stuff is pretty good. I will just little shameless plug for my friend Aaron Clary, who just came out with this book, which I think is awesome. It's A World Without Men, an analysis of an all-female economy, which just kind of is just tons of data, tons of statistics about what the effect has been of pushing all the women into the workforce and how it's changed everything and what the future looks like what he's projecting based on that. So some of this stuff is great, useful stuff. It's very data driven. It's pretty like morally neutral. Like it really doesn't make prescriptions. So there's some of that I think is very helpful and very good stuff that we don't even have to be opposed to. So
right. Well, to frame the conversation for the audience, I think maybe we can talk about what's been happening online so people know maybe why we're talking about this particular topic today. And you may be able to describe it better than I can, but the general outline that I'm aware of has to do with a gentleman named Chase. He goes by Sovereign Bra on X,
Yeah.
and he has become quite popular due to his appearances on the Whatever podcast as promoting sort of Christian values in regards to how a man should go about finding a marriageable woman in today's society. And I'm not exactly sure how it popped off, but he has been in a bit of a contentious discussion between Myron Gaines of the Fresh and Fit podcast as well as Pearly Things.
Yeah.
And it sort of boils down to Sovereign Bra highlighting that there's a lot of degeneracy in regards that may be advocated to people who quote unquote promote the red pill. And that's where I think for our conversation today, I want to situate the red pill not so much with people that have popular platforms that talk about it, but like I have the book The Rational Male by Rollo Tomasi, and I would associate the red pill more with the praxeology that he describes. And that I think is beneficial for many people. And I don't disagree then with Sovereign Bra highlighting that other people that may be utilized, because that's what I see as a lot of the red pill manospheres. Really, they just appropriate Rollo's work, and then they've created popular platforms, usually bringing in what the kids call 304s, OnlyFans girls, and sort of dunking on them and demonstrating the reality of some of the modern sexual dynamics that are occurring. And so this led to Chase talking about Myron Gaines, and he advocates for people not to get married, or men not to get married till they're 35, till they slept with at least 50 women and they make six figures, this type of thing.
Yes.
And obviously, we're coming at it from an Orthodox Christian perspective. And so we're not going to be advocating for a bunch of premarital sex, be it male or female.
Right.
But to equate Myron Gaines with the red pill, I think is totally a fallacious argument and really does a disservice to talking about how the Christ pill is really the prescriptive remedy to the descriptive reality that Tomasi and various people in the red pill have laid out. And so
Yes.
Rollo has highlighted that he's more about praxeology. He's more about describing the state of things as opposed to offering up prescriptions for what to do with it. And I think that's great because that's where I think orthodoxy and a true Christian patriarchy of masculinity and traditional family formation is beneficial to offering those prescriptions. And I think what we're going to get into is highlighting that even if you were to become an Orthodox Christian and not have to deal with some of the degeneracy that's prevalent in most Western forms of Christianity, women that are Orthodox still are hypergamous, still have feminist tendencies, and still have inflated expectations in men. And so, what you're dealing with in regards to what the red pill describes is still infiltrated the church, no matter how much of a pious man you are. Anything you want to add to that sort of framing the conversation there?
Yeah, that was a really good summation. And yes, a lot of it has to do with like online rivalries between creators. So you have like the Whatever podcast, which is what Chase is, he co hosts a lot. Andrew has actually been co hosting a lot. So Andrew has met Chase in person. He's done an episode, he's met him. I've been talking to Chase since on Twitter since before he ever got popular. I think he's a great guy. I think he has the best of intentions. I really believe that. But when you try to, there's this rivalry between Whatever and Fresh and Fit. Fresh and Fit
Oh, okay.
accuses Whatever of copying them. And then like you have certain people that are aligned with both sides and they're competitive. And so some of it has to do with that. And then you also have the other element, which is like Myron and Sneeko are both like red pill guys who are Muslim converts. Or I don't know if Myron was like born Muslim and not really practicing. I'm not 100% sure on that, but certainly, he's going to take issue with Chase talking about the Christian stuff all the time because he just doesn't really believe in that. So then they go after each other. And so there's different parts of the red pill sphere, just like there's different parts of the Christian sphere. Like you and I wouldn't want to be associated with like the James White or the who's the guy out in the Southwest that all of the
Oh,
NAZI
like
kids
the Rick
love.
Wilson?
No, the guy who's always preaching about Pastor Steven Anderson, okay?
Oh,
Like
okay. Gotcha.
somebody like that,
Yeah,
we
yeah.
wouldn't want to be lumped in with him as, oh, those Christians, right? Well, that's how like Rollo and Clary and some of these guys feel like when they get lumped in with, say, there was a guy named John Anthony who was exposed to be a total grifter, total
Right.
phony dating coach type of a guy who claimed to be red pill. He bought all his subs. So there's like they have grifters and sleazeballs and stuff on their side, and then they have people like Rollo's been doing this 20 years. And even if you
Right.
don't like Rollo, I've said this a million times, even if you don't like him, he's contributed some very helpful information for young men who are trying to navigate a landscape where they're being raised by single moms. They only have female teachers. They're in a completely gynocentric, and from our worldview as
I agree
Orthodox,
with all that.
an an inverted society. Okay,
Absolutely.
there's young men trying to deal with growing up in this society, and it's extremely destructive to them. And I mean, I've watched Rollo a bunch, and he gets super chats from guys all the time who say that his advice saved their life, that they were about to just end it, and it gave them some hope that maybe there's a way to navigate this world. Maybe I can find like some value in myself. And that's more like what he does. Same thing with Clary. He helps people manage like their finances, their economics. He tells them not to go to college and get useless stupid degrees. He tells them not to go into debt. So like there's parts of the red pill community that are actually pretty useful and we would mostly agree with and we can get along with fine. And then like you said, the people who are saying stack 50 bodies. Well, first of all, let's talk about the fact that Myron telling guys to stack up 50 bodies before they get married is never going to happen
Right.
for most guys.
Right.
And how do we know this? We know this because historically, I've said this a lot. If you look at genetic studies that have been done, every one of us has twice as many female ancestors as male ancestors. So all throughout human history, however long you think that is, whether you're an evolutionary psychology bro or you're Orthodox and you don't think that, however long humans have been here, only about 40% of men who have ever been born have been able to pass along their genetics, while 80% of women who've ever been born have been able to pass it on. So, like, men have always been at a much bigger disadvantage reproductive wise. They've always had to compete, and it's brutal competition. Men are the ones that have to face rejection and risk things to even get a wife. So, like, now you add on top of that hypergamy and feminism and
Yep.
the degenerate culture we live in, and we have to, like, this is my biggest gripe with people I've talked to on our side, like the Christ pill side, is that they want to kind of just dismiss all that and say, well, if you just get in the gym and improve yourself and you go to church, like it's all going to be fine. And that's a
Right.
them, it becomes a them problem, right? It's for the degenerates to worry about. If you're in the church, you've got no worries.
Right.
um
And that's the utopian rhetoric that I want to take umbrage with in
yeah.
regards to the Christ pill. And I've got some bullet points here, and maybe that would be fruitful is to sort of identify what the red pill is, at least in our understanding. And I think that we would be able to steel man it
Yep.
because I've pulled it basically from the Rational Male because that book has really been pivotal to the whole manosphere. However,
Yeah.
you want to think of the various people that promote or sort of regurgitate Rollo's ideas, and then what the Christ pill is, because again, I think that they're not exactly the same thing,
Right.
although in a way they sort of go in tandem. So some of the stuff that I have for the red pill, like what exactly is the red pill? Because the red pill is not equivalent to stacking 50 bodies and sleeping with as many women as you can. That is associated with many of the game coaches and stuff like that use a lot of the stuff that has been mentioned. And so I have obviously the gynocentric world order, that we live in an order that again favors women. Um, One-itis. So this idea, and this is going to be when we get into the Christ pill and we get into dating within the church, this idea that as long as you become Christian, you're going to get a wife, that's a fairy tale. And that's a utopian idea that I do not think is beneficial for men, because I have young men in my parish that I'm helping try to find wives to marry. It's not that simple.
No.
And other things that we're going to talk about with the red pill describing female dating preferences, that's still true when women come to the church, even though maybe they're not stacking bodies like they used to. the
Right.
the way what they're looking for and what they expect is still the same as in secular dating. So
Yes.
I want to address that. So the one-itis, men, it basically putting all their eggs in one basket in regards to a woman. This is tied with some of the red pill stuff that Rolo discusses. Having leverage by not needing her. I think this is really important. And the idea of having a purpose, having your life going somewhere where it's not the point of your life isn't to accommodate to a woman or a single woman or whatever. I mean, women typically find that a bit repulsive and a bit
Yes.
needy.
Yes.
Growing, become higher quality value of a man. Okay, we can agree with that.
Hmm.
Spin plates, date multiple women. And this has been, maybe we can speak
Yeah.
specifically to this one because
Yes.
this has come up in regards to some of this back and forth that has emerged online. Is that Chase talked about spinning plates as being degenerate. And that's, if you read Rolo's book, that's not exactly what he's saying. You can
Right.
date and for example, I have a fiance. I'm an Orthodox Christian, and I have been single through this modern dating period, and I had to navigate this landscape. And so, when you are trying to meet women or go meet somewhere to talk with them, it's not degenerate to be in conversation as friends or whatnot with multiple girls. I
Right.
was voluntarily celibate when I went to pursue a wife, and so I was not going out and sleeping with a bunch of women. But I've noticed even within, again, the Christ pillars and people in the church, one woman will show them attention, and all of a sudden the rhetoric is that you're going to marry her. She's the one. This is God's providence. And it's like, whoa, 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 you need to slow
Yeah.
up. So I think the spinning plates ties into the one-itis and the having leverage by not needing her, because even within the Christian sphere, I think we can see this being a problem.
Yeah, definitely. And like, there's things that I think, especially the women on our side, the men too, but just my interactions with Christian women, Orthodox women, and then like other varieties of Christian, like women who consider themselves traditional, family oriented Christian. Let's just be honest. I know I'm going to try to be diplomatic and not ruffle feathers, but I have to be honest. That's what I'm here to do. Most of the women do not like to hear the truth about how women are. So when you say, like, don't make her the center of your universe, have leverage by not needing her, things like that. Christian women hear that and they instantly go, well, I never. That is it. And here comes the misogyny, right? This is misogynistic. If
Right.
you speak of women in any other tone other than they're perfect angels, they're born innocent and pure, and they would never ever do anything, that's wrong or manipulative. They would surely never, unless a mean man came along and ruined them. And that's the only reason women ever misbehave. Is just baloney and lies. We have the
Right.
same trappings and the same pitfalls. I mean, different ones, but we're just as prone to that as men, if not more so, honestly. So, like, women will sit here and act like that's not what they want, but be honest, ladies. Like, if you have a guy that's just, you're the center of his universe, he doesn't think of anyone else, he texts you 100 times a day, he seems like he's got nothing else going but you, your ovaries shrivel up and die, and you want
Yep.
nothing to do with him. And that's whether you want that to be the case or not, it is the case, right? So,
Absolutely.
and I'm in agreement with you. I've been in some of the Orthodox dating groups. I tried to help out with a couple different ones, which I immediately knew that this was not for me because it's rough out there and I didn't want to be in people's personal business. That's really not what I do. I'm not a life coach. I'm not a dating coach. I'm not a guru. I'm not the advice lady who's going to help you with your personal stuff. I do history books and philosophy stuff and things like that. But when I was in these groups, this is what I saw. I'm just going to be honest, and it might make some people mad, but I saw women who had their fun, had their hot girl summer in
Yep.
their 20s and even into their 30s.
Yep.
They hit a point in time where it's no longer working for them. And they do need to look outside themselves for a purpose. And they do need to take a look at their life and see where they need fixing. Now, we want that. That's good
Yes.
stuff. We want that, okay? I'm not saying that's bad. I'm not saying that Jesus can't. This was the big thing between Chase and Myron was Myron said Jesus can't save these 304s, right? And Chase said, "Yes, he can." And I said, "Of course he can. Yes, he can. Absolutely he can. But You cannot enter the church at 35 and become a reformed, formerly promiscuous lady
Right.
and then decide that you still want, a young, 6 foot tall, six figures, six pack abs alpha Chad who wants a family, but you're 35 and can't give him one. And I have many male friends in the sphere who are trying to date Orthodox women, and they run into this over and over and over to the extent that it's pretty overwhelming. These girls that are 35, 40 years old, and they're like, why won't he marry me? And the guy's like, well, I want to have a bunch of kids. And if I start dating you now and we date for a year and then we get married and say it takes us a year or maybe longer to get pregnant because, you're 38 or something, I'm so sorry. You're probably a wonderful lady, but that's not going to work for me. And a lot of times the guys are even younger. And I had a friend send me screenshots from a dating group where it was like a lady in her 50s wanting to date my 36-year-old friend. And she told him, you're not a good Christian because you won't consider me just because of my age. And that's ageist and you're misogynistic. So I'm just saying the reality on the ground is that there is a lot of feminist baggage because most of us in Orthodoxy are converts. Most of us are not
Exactly.
cradle, right? So we're all coming with our secular baggage, our evangelical baggage, our feminist or, whatever baggage we come in with. And that doesn't disappear overnight, right? You can't just come into the church and be like, well, I'm here now and I'm born again. And so where's my, 6 foot tall alpha Chad who's going to wife me up, even though I do have a past that's good. And by the way, guys, I don't know if you've heard the rumors, but I also came in with a past, right?
Right.
Like, although we're talking about I'm turning this around when I'm 25, so it's a little different age-wise, but I am not sitting here saying like I'm some pure virgin person who you all need to be like me. No, no, no. I would never, never say that. I'm the first to say I've got plenty of stuff in my early history that I did wrong and that was naive and stupid.
Right.
What I am saying is that when that happened to me, I very much adjusted my expectations. And I said I just looked at my situation realistically and I was like, if I'm single the rest of my life, that's okay. Like that might be what happens. And if I get any good guy who's willing to, marry me after I've been divorced and have these kids and everything else, that's great. I will take it, right? I didn't have this mindset of I deserve the same thing I would deserve if I was 20 and a virgin and had made all the right choices.
Right.
That's just not what we see. We see women that come in and they want, like you said, the expectations are crazy sometimes.
Absolutely. And again, I had to deal with this, and I'm very fortunate, and God bless me with a young, beautiful, pious, pure Orthodox girl. But that took over 3 years of me restricting myself and trying to become a different person. And
Mhm.
so I have lived experience within the ortho dating world or the Christian dating world. And this utopian sort of naive idea, and I'm sure many of the men can in the chat here can attest to this, is that everything that the red pill talks about is still within the church. I'm
Yep.
talking about the Orthodox Church. Obviously, it's going to be in the Protestant churches. I don't, and I'm going to say this flatly, I don't believe Protestantism will exist in its structure that it exists today within a couple generations.
Yep.
Protestantism is dead. The
Yes.
only thing left will be the Catholic Church and the Orthodox Church, and it's quite easy, I would argue, to make a difference between those two of which one's the real church and which
Yeah.
one has a real patriarchy.
Yeah.
And so
Exactly.
and so um this Christ pill rhetoric, and I want to go into what I believe the Christ pill actually is, because it's certainly tied with masculinity. It's certainly tied with men becoming better versions of themselves. But this idea that, oh, you just have to go to the gym and go to a church. Well, what type of church? What's
Right.
theology? Is there a patriarchy? Is it traditional? Well, that's not mentioned. Just any church, this ecumenical, feel good Christianity that's being promoted as like online Christ pill masculinity is, one, ridiculous, and two, it's totally naive and utopian, because all these women are still, and the men too, we're all coming in with baggage.
Yeah.
The difference is the expectations that some of these women that come into the church, like you said, is still way overly inflated. And I saw it myself. Women in their mid 30s who had all their hot girl summers. I'm a man. Yeah, I had a pass, but I worked and developed many of the qualities that the red pill will say give somebody quote unquote higher value. And I'm not trying to egotistical or anything like that. That was a process, and men do develop themselves later, which is true. And by the time that you're in your 30s as a man, if you've been constantly working, you've acquired skills and assets and some type of status to be a little bit more feasible as a marriageable option. But the women, they want you to totally forget it, and as if like that makes you unchristian. And it does not make you unchristian to have a preference to build a strong traditional Christian family in regards to the women. And when we get to the Christ pill, this is going to be the hard reality, because if we look at sexual dynamics between men and women, we have an incel problem.
Yeah.
And that's true, again, within the church or outside the church. And the problem is that 70% of women don't find men attractive. And
Yep.
we're talking about submission here. We're talking about getting a
Yes.
woman to submit to you so that you can actually be a leader of a family. And whether
Right.
you're in a church or not, if you fall victim to some of these things that the red pill, I would say, accurately talks about, you're going to be screwed, because the Christ pill does not fix the court system. The Christ pill
Yes.
does not fix the fact that a woman could be Christian today, because again, you were sort of nominal in the way that you approached your marriage options, and now she's going to leave you, and now you're screwed. Doesn't matter if you're a pastor or whatever. And so
Yeah.
there's real conversation between these things, and we need to highlight this sort of naive Christ pill. All you have to do is make an altar call, and now God's going to give you your wife. No.
Yeah.
And if you are the female who makes the altar call, and now you've shut down your OnlyFans account, God's going to give you a husband. No,
Right.
absolutely not. That's not how this works.
Exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, one thing the red pill does well is they just give you the data and the facts. And I had an Orthodox Christian lady who's older than me, who I really do respect and I really appreciate her. Give me some criticism. And I said, let's go to DMs and do this. Like, first of all, let's stop this stuff where we all fight on the timeline, because I'm really trying not to do that myself as well. So I was like, let's go in DMs and just honestly talk and chat about this. And she really kind of had this idea that that we're Orthodox and we don't have these problems. This is a secular world problem. So you
No.
just stay in your parish where it's safe and we don't have to worry about these things. And I brought up the fact that, yeah, most of us are converts, not cradles. So we bring all the baggage in. It takes years to develop an Orthodox phronema. I'm about to be baptized, you guys, by the way. Finally, it's been postponed like 10 times because of weather and all these other things. But the 10th, we will be baptized and chrismated into the church finally. But it
Oh
took
my
us
God.
three
I'll be there.
years just to make it to baptism. And I know it's going to take me many more years after that to really start to truly develop, theosis and an Orthodox worldview. So pretending like we can just enter the church and it solves our problems is not only naive, but you do have to take a look at the reality of the situation, which is this, okay? Most girls, on average, are going to start to be sexually active around the age of 16 these
Right.
days. For many of them,
True.
it's a lot older, but let's just stick with 16 as an average. The average woman in America now doesn't get married until the age of 30.
Right.
That is 14 years of a woman being sexually active. We tell all the girls to go to college, and we all know what happens at college.
Absolutely.
So let's just say on average across those 14 years, she's just with 2 guys a year. Now, the data I've looked at is much more. It's much more. But let's just be charitable and say 2 on average per year. That means that the average woman at 30 has about 28 partners that she's been with. That's not the case for most guys. That's the case for the top like 10% of guys. The top 10% of guys will get that many. But 80% of guys are going to hit 30 and maybe they've been with, 4 or 5 girls. Maybe they've been with 0. And so this is why. So when you hear Myron say you should get 50 bodies by the time you're 35 before you get married, that's terrible advice. We don't believe what he's saying. We would never prescribe that. But you have to understand, why is he saying that? He's saying that because he's saying, look, you're not anywhere on even terms. Women have all the power in the legal system. They have all the power in school systems. They have all kinds of, affirmative action stuff. They can get business loans. Women can ruin a man's entire life with a
I'll be
single
right back, Rachel.
accusation.
My computer just screwed up. I'll be right back. Just keep
Oh,
talking.
shoot.
Keep talking.
Okay.
I'll be right back in.
Sure, no problem. Yeah, women can destroy a man's entire life simply with a false accusation. Okay, we've seen this happen to lots of college guys, people at work. A lady makes an accusation, says they had an affair, or says he made an advance that, or did something worse than that. The whole guy's life is completely destroyed. And Rollo calls this getting zeroed out, where a woman takes you for everything you have. Your reputation's destroyed, your career is gone, your money is gone. She probably took your kids, this sort of thing. Men can't do that. Men don't zero out women. Now, I'm
Right.
saying this as a woman who I have been on the short end of the stick with this because I was divorced before and I wasn't one of those ladies that got everything, right? Which is fine. But I'm just saying, like, the reality for men is that this is what I don't want the Christ pill bros to ignore is this incredibly dangerous, risky, inverted system that men have to try to navigate where really all the advantage is to women. Women have all the protections, they have all the insurance, and everything is skewed in their direction.
Right.
And so it's a very difficult thing to tell young men, suck it up, wife up the 304, take all the risk financially, emotionally, everything, because we know that the nature of most women, because listen, if you've been sexually active for 14 years and you've been through like boyfriend after boyfriend after boyfriend, a woman like that has never practiced making a relationship work.
Exactly.
She's only practiced breaking up. She's very
Exactly.
good at leaving. She's practiced at leaving, and
Yep.
she has trained herself that when a certain thing or a certain point in the relationship comes, you leave.
Right.
Okay. You don't just untrain that by going to church. These are just things that don't dissolve and fade away, and the risks don't fade away. And on a quick personal note, my parents divorced when I was 9. At this time, my dad and my mom, me and my sister were baptized into a very conservative Dutch Reformed church. Now it's a Protestant church, okay, so we know it's a heresy church, but as far as a heresy church goes, it's a very traditional, like staunchly conservative church. My mother decided she started reading a bunch of feminist literature, got really indoctrinated, and she said, "This stay-at-home wife stuff is baloney. I'm going to go have an affair. I'm going to find myself. I'm going to be free and do what I want." Right? So she goes out on my dad, gets a boyfriend. The boyfriend turns out to be predatory, but she still files for divorce, gets the divorce. My dad has to leave his home that he built, that he paid for, especially because in 1989, he didn't know anything about men's rights. There were no men's rights lawyers. He had no clue. And my mom moves this guy into the house. And not only all of that, you guys, is that's all bad enough. The church went to my dad, who was a deacon, a long-standing deacon who had been tithing for 7 or 8 years and being a deacon in the church. And they said, "We have to kick you off consistory because you can't be divorced and be on
Right.
the church consistory." And he was like, "What? I didn't want this. This was completely unilateral. I didn't want this at all. I'm just trying to get my kids out of a dangerous situation and now you're going to kick me out of the church." And they were like, "Yeah, sorry. Nothing we can do about it." So, like, my dad is one of those people who got zeroed out, and being in the church and being a great guy and a good provider and doing all the right things didn't protect him from losing everything,
Right.
everything. And it really like broke his faith for a lot of years too. So yeah, I think it's worse in Protestant churches and even in Catholic churches. Our friend Tim Gordon, who's very, traditional Catholic, will
Yep.
also admit that there's tons of feminism in the Catholic Church.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
I
it's
I appreciate Tim Gordon, a lot of his work. I'd love to get him on the channel.
yeah,
I think
you guys would get
he
along
is
great.
arguably one of the best voices within the Catholic sphere.
Yeah,
And so, again, just to round out what the red pill is, and then maybe I can describe as an Orthodox
yeah,
perspective what the Christ pill is, and then we can get more into the details of some of the problems with both in this sort of emergent conflict that has happened. So, I've highlighted, if we're going to describe what the red pill is and not what red pill various platforms advocate for, but the general core of the red pill, and I'm taking this from the Rational Male: gynocentric world order, one-itis, men not having leverage by, again, needing women, not growing and becoming higher quality. So spin plates have multiple options so that you don't get that one-itis. unplugging through the red pill, sexual marketplace values that, again, there's different metrics in which men are judged by women versus what men are judging women by in regards to marriage material. Keeping a woman's interest. Again, the red pill is talking about how to maintain genuine attraction. And this is going to be another problem within the Christian sphere
Yes.
is getting genuine attraction for a woman so that she will submit to you. And we're going to bring that up, and I want to speak more in detail about that here in a few. And then women testing you through shit tests and stuff like this. He mentions that. And then Rollo has a sort of 9 iron rules. Frame is everything. I think this is good advice in regards to having boundaries for men. And so that when women cross your boundaries, you actually have a frame to maintain.
Yep.
So he advocates not sharing your sexual number. Don't wait for a woman who doesn't wait for you. Don't live with a woman you're not married to. I'm all for that.
Yeah.
Don't allow a woman to be in control of her birth control. I'm all for that. Birth control, but we know for a fact, and this has been brought up by people in the quote unquote Christ pill sphere, is that birth control alters the hormones of women and they become attracted to more feminized men. Fact.
Yes. Yep.
And so if you're dating a woman that's on birth control, that's a real possibility, depending on who you are and how you're developing yourself as a man. Women don't love men in the same way that they expect them to. I think that's also a sort of misconception. In Disney, these romance novels, again, I think a lot of men kind of fall victim to some of this work, and it sort of taints the way that they think these relationships are going to go, even in the church.
Yeah.
And then he mentions don't help women figure out why they're not into you. That's probably a good one.
Yeah.
And he mentions not being overly self-deprecating. And so then what is the Christ pill? In this Christ pill, again, nobody has really defined what the Christ pill is. So what I'm getting ready to do is more my own personal take and my opinion on what the Christ pill is and should be, especially coming from an Orthodox perspective. And so online, the rhetoric has often been, well, the Christ pill is men realizing that, Jesus Christ is God. He's the King of Kings. All true. And therefore go to a church. Well, what kind of church? Doesn't matter what kind of church. Just go to a quote unquote Christian church, belong to a parish of some sort, no matter what the denomination is, and then try to become a righteous, pious man by repenting from your previous life. And then you'll be able to find a good Christian woman in the church. So as we've already highlighted, that is naive thinking. But what I've written down is what the Christ pill is number one, the Christ pill is realizing that the Logos incarnated as Jesus Christ, uniting the prophetic tradition of the Hebrews and the philosophical traditions of the Greeks. And so this is a large theological, metaphysical understanding that, again, is going to play into conspiracy theories. And I think the red pill crowd, the truther sphere, and also the Christ pill crowd, we're aware of the globalism. We're aware of the New World Order and all this stuff. So the first one is realizing the Christ pill is coming to a genuine faith belief in the incarnation of the Logos, the second person of the Holy Trinity. Number two is that real conspiracies exist and that there is a spiritual warfare against the incarnate God and the metaphysical reality that we exist in. And so I brought up feminism, central banking conspiracies, which we know about, the state of Israel, LGBTQ's agenda, the New World Order, Agenda 21, mass immigration into first world countries, satanic inversion of every category that's good in the world. This, from a Christ pill perspective, is not just, this is the way that society is evolving due to evolutionary pressures. No, this is a spiritual warfare that is inverting everything that's true, good, and beautiful. And this is about an attack on your soul.
Yes.
Number three, masculinity is a gift from God. And men maintain the order and structures of the world. And so if we're looking at the detriments and the collapse of the West, yes, the women are obviously more promiscuous and they're not the same women that your father and your grandfather married. But also the men have become so weak that they've allowed this to happen. And I think we have to point a major finger at Protestantism because the Reformation theology and the consequences and how that led into the Enlightenment, all of this stuff is a problem. This is why Protestantism will not exist. And this is why Protestantism has no place in solving this, because
Right.
the relativistic presuppositions of sola scriptura aid into the I have my own truth, you have your own truth, and it leads into the relativism and subjectivism that dominates Western society.
Yes.
And so masculinity is a gift from God, and Jesus Christ is that standard. And I highlight self-sacrifice is a masculine characteristic. So living for something and goals that transcend yourself, which include building a strong Christian family. Um, Authority, Christ is the King of Kings. He is the ultimate authority. Responsibility, part of masculinity is taking on more responsibility in your life and growing and maturing as a man. And so if you're 50 years old and you have the cars and you have the money and you have a nice house, and yet you have no children, you've committed to nothing, you've contributed nothing, you've lived a life of selfishness, that I do not believe is masculine, and I believe it contributes to everything we've highlighted that the red pill is then trying to describe as degenerate. Competency, Christ is the ultimate competent person in history. And to become a man, you must become competent at something. Honor among men is a masculine characteristic. And so it doesn't matter if you're a plumber, doesn't matter if you're a philosopher, doesn't matter if you're an artist, doesn't matter if you're an athlete. Masculinity and men that achieve higher things acquire honor and respect from other men. And then righteousness. I don't think you can actually be truly masculine and actually be a good man and not be a righteous person. Number 4 is to fight the evils of this world that we've highlighted and all these conspiracies that are in fact true. We need to become righteous, higher quality, masculine men. This is the Christ pill. Number 5, we need to then marry pious Christian girls so that we can have big, strong families that raise the next generation. This idea that we're going to stop what's happening within the next 20 years or 10 years, again, naive thinking. The
Yeah.
game that we're playing is going to
Long
way
game.
outlast my lifespan. I'm playing
Yep.
for my children's children. That's
Me
the point
too.
in which we win. That has to be a central point. This Christ pill thing, where the Christ pill is about you coming in the church and you're going to get your utopian white picket fence lifestyle, that is a false bill of goods, and it's a weakness, because the game that we're playing is that the enemies that we're up against are sterile. They do not produce life, and that we are going to produce life, and we're going to produce righteous people that are going to outlive ourselves, and they're going to be there for the next generation, and they're going to do the right things the generation following. So the way that we stop the things that are happening, as Myron pointed out to Chase, that how's Jesus going to save all the 304s right now? Well, Jesus can save the soul of anybody,
Yeah.
but we're not going to be stopping this in the next 10 to 20 years at all.
Yeah.
The point is to build safe havens where we're building strong families, and we're going to dominate the generations that follow. And so raising the next generation that will alter the momentum of the current society. And we have a real potential to do that because, again, our enemies do not produce, because they
Yes.
can't produce, because they're against God. And then the last one is that the Orthodox Church is the body of Christ. This lip service that anybody who has done an altar call or proclaims to be a Christian is part of the body of Christ is absolutely rejected by the Orthodox Church. And the feminized churches that they belong to that have LGBTQ, female pastors that are really soft on things, that's not going to save anything. In fact, that's the damn problem. And so I don't give a damn. That's not going to help us. And so the body of Christ is the Orthodox Church, and every other form is a weaker, more feminized, worldly version from the historical faith and the church that Christ and the apostles established. And that marriage is a sacrament. And that, again, that sacrament, as an Orthodox Christian, we do not recognize the sacraments of these other traditions because they're not totally valid. So I want to lay that out. To me, that is the Christ pill. That is the pill that men do aspire to. And notice that has nothing to do with entering the church and it's going to be given to you. That is a frailty. And so any comments on that? I know that was a lot, but that was just kind of going over the red pill and what I believe to be the Christ pill. And then I got some negatives on both sides, but
Yeah.
wherever you want to go.
Well, no, I was just letting you cook because I feel like we should all applaud after that. I'm going to clip that. I'm going to put it everywhere because it was like a good old fashioned DPH fire and brimstone, like get on my soapbox and tell you guys what's up. And you're right about all of that. The thing I want to focus on, well, there's a bunch of things we could talk about there, but one thing, and I know I know this is going to be controversial. I wish I didn't always have to come out and say true stuff that's going to make half the people mad. But Protestantism, you guys, and I have Protestant friends who are in the chat right now. I have Protestant family and friends who I love. But you guys have to understand, half of my book is explaining exactly how first the Roman Catholic Church erred, and from that came Protestantism, and Protestantism was the birth of the revolutionary period. Okay. All of this post Enlightenment nonsense we're dealing with, feminism, revolutionary mindset, multiculturalism, all the isms that we know are bad come out of this mindset. Just like Patrick just said, because everybody gets to do their own interpretation. It's my truth of Christianity. And it's like, I deal with a lot of women like this all the time in my own life who are like, just give me Jesus. Jesus is my friend and he loves me the way that I am. And they have this totally, so for a woman to just say, well, I'm Christian, it's safe to marry me is baloney. Because
Right.
what most Protestant women think that means is I'm perfect the way I am. Jesus loves me just the way I am. I don't have to repent. There's no humility. They come up with this, like both the Protestant and Catholic churches have this idea of like servant leadership, that there's no patriarchy. We're going to be egalitarian, something that came out of Protestantism and the Enlightenment period. This idea that, oh, God sees us as equal, so it's a partnership, and you're supposed to, be the patriarch of the family, but what that really means is you need to serve the woman. You need to
Right.
serve the woman and
No.
what she wants. And this is bad for women. We all know it's bad for men, but it's bad for women. It's horrible for women because what are we telling them? We're telling them there's no need to be humble. There's no need to repent. You are perfect the way you are because Jesus loves you just how you are. It's everyone else that needs to change. And this is why you see like really high rates of out of wedlock births and abortion and divorce in the evangelical churches. This is why the Lutheran mainline church now has, I think when I last checked, they have like 40% of their bishops are women, you guys.
Unreal.
What on earth? And now
Unreal.
they've got,
And that's gonna save you from feminism. Unreal.
exactly. So
Unreal.
how can we just tell young men, "Oh, just be Christian and it's gonna fix things?" And it's like, what Patrick's saying is true. You can't be like, "Well, the other forms they're close enough. It's better than nothing. I guess it's better than nothing." Honestly, I think it's almost worse to tell young men to take that path because
Absolutely.
you're feeding them into a feminist meat grinder that they think is Christianity. And when it eats them alive, they lose their faith and they're an atheist forevermore. And
Right.
that's exactly what you saw in the boomer generation. Like, that's exactly what happened to them. So that has to be part of the conversation, even though it's very uncomfortable. I know it's fun to have this idea that we can have a pan Christian ministry that's going to fix things. I don't think that that's possible unless we're willing to talk about the difficulties with that. And then what was the other thing? Oh, the other thing that's problematic when we talk about fixing the system, when we talk about family courts being so corrupt, divorce laws being, bullshit, to be honest,
Right.
that is also a reflection of America being a Protestant nation because
Absolutely.
the people who came here, and I detail this in my book, do a whole chapter on it. When they came here, they decided that we're going to get rid of the sacraments for the most part. A lot of them, not all of them, but most of the really influential WASPy Protestants in the New York state area, the upper Northeast, who were very influential. Some of them were Quakers, some of them became Amish later, Puritans, all different varieties, but this was the people of the first and second Great Awakening. And they decided that we don't need marriage as a sacrament anymore because we're not doing sacraments, because it can just be you and your Bible in your prayer corner. And we're not even going to have crosses in the church. And we're not even going to call it a church. It's now a meeting house. Like, this was the flavor and brand of Christianity that these people affirmed. Many of them were Unitarians, many were Universalists. They
Yep.
had LGBT lady preachers as far as early as 1840. Okay. So this is very old. They've been doing this for a really long time. This is where all of the suffrage and the feminism stuff comes out of. So to simply slap a Christian label on it and say it's good is not going to work. And the other problem is they have no ecclesiastical authority. So you have to put all of the authority regarding marriage and divorce into the hands of the state. And when you do that, as an American, you have to make it neutral. You have to make it secular. Well,
Right.
secular isn't even neutral. That's kind of a misleading idea,
And
but
secularism celebrated by these Protestants. They think that's a
yeah,
fabulous thing.
I think
Again,
it's
they
great.
deserve
They're the first ones who will go, "I want there to be separation of church and state. I think that's a great idea.
yeah.
I don't agree with your right to do child sacrifice, but I will die for it. You to have that right." These type of, libertarian Protestant, it's their phronema. It's the Americanist Protestant worldview. And so that worldview won't solve the problems that worldview created. And we certainly can't fix the system that has created, uh, we don't have families. We don't have families anymore.
Right.
I think more children are born out of wedlock than in wedlock now. More
Right.
children come from disrupted family backgrounds than intact family backgrounds now. And this is also the worldview that tells women. I mean, I see good Christian dads telling even pastors telling their daughters, you must go to college. You have to get a career. You've
Right.
got to have your own money
Yep.
and start this.
And join a sorority.
Yep. Yeah, and wait until you're 30 to get married. Well,
Yeah. I
let's
hear that
be
all the time.
honest. Let's be honest about that, you guys. Nobody's waiting till 30 and they're all going to stay virgins. They're all going to go off to college. They're all going to live in apartments, with their friends. They're going to be in sororities. They're going to be waiting till 30 to get married and start having a family. Number one, that means that's why we have 5% of women getting married as virgins now.
Right.
5%, about 5%, which 120 years ago, it was the opposite. It was only about 5% of women getting married weren't virgins. And even if you think they're lying and there were more, it's just completely inverted. It's
Right.
totally inverted. So we've got that. And then we've also just got this idea of we're telling Christian women to wait until you're in your 30s to start a family. And we
Right.
wonder why the birth rate is. This is why Protestants have a terribly low birth rate.
Right. Well, and
So,
they're getting ready to be aged out. As I
yes.
talked about before, the average age of attendee is in the 60s for almost every Protestant
Yeah.
denomination. Mormons are kicking their ass, and it's because it's way more of a lifestyle that's built in. And so Protestantism's going to die, especially with the boomers. It's going to crumble. And
Yeah.
this idea then that the Christ pill is just like come to Joe Blow's church on the corner, and I'm going to help you get your Christian wife.
Yeah.
This is a fallacious idea, and this is where I want to show some of the shortcomings that I've seen of the people talking about this Christ pill online. Is again this naive utopian ideal that women in the church, even in the Orthodox Church, and again I can attest to this from my own experience, trying to find a genuine, pious Christian woman to build a family with that intention. Hypergamy, feminist tendencies, and overinflated expectations based on who they are absolutely permeates dating, whether it be the Catholic or the Orthodox Church. Let's just leave Protestantism out of this because it's already so damn worldly. It's not going to offer anything. But even in the Catholic and the Orthodox churches, the women who, and God bless them for correcting course, let's say
Yeah.
they genuinely repented from their sins. Absolutely. There is a place for them in the church. But that does not mean they get to get the man that they wanted when they were 24 years old. Not going to happen. And
Nope.
and so then we have good, genuine Christian guys that they can't date the average 30-year-old girl in the Orthodox Church because the women, have overinflated expectations on what they think they deserve. And it's still a consumer culture. And they
Yeah.
think they're going to enter the church and they're going to still be able to consume the ideal male commodity that they think they deserve. And it's not going to happen. It's
Right.
not going to happen because the men that are in the church that actually are that commodity are not interested. And they're going to find the girls that actually did preserve themselves, that actually offer the things that the man can offer the other partner in exchange. And so the one shortcoming is this utopian idea about women, and taking the Christ pill does not mean women will submit to you. This is
Right.
the part where the red pill has genuine things to offer to Christians. Is
Yep.
how exactly do you get a woman to have genuine desire for you, looks up to you, and is willing to submit to you, and you are the leader of the family? That does not come by being knowledgeable about theology, being a very good man, a moral man, a smart man, having a decent job, even being decently fit. those things are not going to give you a woman to submit. There's other things that have to be worked on here. And so this
Right.
Christ pill is totally disingenuous in that regard. And the last one is that the Christ pill doesn't solve the divorce courts. And
Right.
so, yes, I am promoting monogamous marriage. Absolutely. I'm an
Yeah.
Orthodox Christian, and marriage is a sacrament of the church. But that does not mean that you just find the first girl in the Orthodox Church and get married to, because the divorce courts are still real. There is still a
Yeah.
massive downside for men. And that's why you have to take your time, and you have to make sure you have, and I don't mean to use such crass language, but you have to have some leverage as a man so that you do. And this is where the red pill offers us ideas. Do not be overly infatuated with a single woman because the one cute girl at the parish finally talked to you and now you're dreaming about marrying her. You're setting yourself up for failure. And
Yes.
the idea that you're more concerned with getting a woman than your purpose is the number one thing why you're not going to get the woman. I have been very fortunate. God has blessed me, and I found the woman I wanted. She was in her very early 20s. She was a pious, beautiful Christian girl, and she had been preserved by her conservative family. But one of the things she told me and still tells me is that she loves that my genuine focus of my life is my purpose and my work.
Yes.
Like, she
Because
genuinely finds that attractive. Not that I can give her time when I'm able to and give her the attention that every girl wants. But if you don't have a purpose, if you don't have a mission that you're on as a life goal, how can a woman submit to you? Because you're not going anywhere.
right, right. Well, that's what women need to submit is desire for sure, but also respect. We have to be able to respect you. And if you're worshiping us, we literally can't respect you. And this is what the red pill gets right. You know, they tell men, don't simp. I'm probably the leading proponent on Twitter of telling people to stop simping. We have chats in the Crucible, little custom emojis in the Crucible chat that say, no simping and things like that, because this is one thing I wanted to address, is that what something a lot of Christian folks don't understand is, like, women don't want the simps. They want this top 10% of guys, and then all the other guys are in the middle somewhere.
Right.
And it's you're always going to have more simps in the way that things are now. Okay, not this isn't how it ought to be, but the way we are now, there's a million simps for every couple decent guys, and they're going to social media, okay? Even Christian girls, good Christian girls, discover social media and find that all they have to do is post cute selfies, and they'll get all kinds of guys trying
Right.
to buy them things, give them compliments, feed them attention. This is a real problem, and our side doesn't want to address it. They want to pretend that if we just, send them to youth group stuff or summer camps, or, have them in church, that this will go away. We have to have a strategy for dealing with this as Christians, and we have to have a church and clergy who understand what's going on and how to address this as well. We need priests who are going to, you know, as the spiritual father, give counsel to wives that says, you must be submissive, and teach them about that. I'm not saying hammer women, beat them until they
Right.
submit. I'm saying teach them how, by not doing that, like, teach them how they're already brainwashed, because we all are. All of
Right.
us women are. And I struggle with this after 17 years with a guy that I submit to. I still have my moments where I have to shut my mouth, and I have to take a step back and take a couple deep breaths and be like, all right, okay, you need to chill, and listen to Andrew and not give him any crap, right? This is a struggle for all women. It's part of our curse from the fall.
Right.
But the Orthodox Church at least has the proper understanding of ontology, of what women are and what men are, which the other churches don't even have anymore. Like I
Right.
said, are you going to go to a church that has lesbian bishops?
And that's what, yeah, and
And
that's
that's
supposed to
going to
get you
help you at all?
a good Christian marriage. Like, that's why it's the joke, and that's why it makes Christianity look weak and effeminate,
Yeah,
and those forms deserve the mocking they get.
yeah.
But that is not the Christ pill. That is not the type of men that I think are going to better society and actually build strong families that are going to have big families, traditional families, and are going to alter the course of culture in generations to come. And Natasha makes a good point here. We won't submit unless we feel physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually supported. But that comes with a man who has those capabilities due to the way he's developed himself and is moving towards other goals. So the physicality, yeah, if you're overweight, then get in shape. That doesn't mean getting in shape and getting muscles is going to get you a girl. It does not mean that at all, but at least you can offer physical protection. Mental, like you need to be sharp. If you're ineloquent and you can't talk and you can't, you're socially awkward when you're approaching women, how are you going to get a woman to submit to you? Just because she's Christian and you told her all about theology, like that's not going to work. And men have to be leaders of their own lives. And that's where this is going to be a hard truth. This is going to be a really hard truth that, again, nobody wants to talk about, is that 70% of the women do not find these men in the middle attractive.
Yep.
Well, what happens? What happens when these two immovable objects come together? This is where you say, well, these men who are, right in the middle, they're supposed to just go ahead and marry these women? Absolutely not. That's setting them up for failure. And we've already said that the court system's not changing. So unfortunately, and that's going to be true within the church or in the secular world, the incel phenomenon, men who are just not as well equipped to deal with women and maybe some of their inflated expectations, because that is a fact.
Yeah.
Secular and Christian women have inflated expectations of what they deserve. Doesn't matter what they believe about our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. But some of these men and some of these women are going to be shit out of luck, to be frank. And what are we going to do about that? Because that's something that nobody wants to talk about. They act like all these X304s are going to come into the church, and then all of our men are just going to wife them up, and everybody's going to get married.
Yeah,
no, we shouldn't tell men to marry these girls unless they're genuine. And I'm not saying that. And this is the other thing, is we do have grace for women that lived promiscuous lifestyles. Absolutely, we have grace for them. And I hope they get married, and I hope they repent and they change their ways. I want them to get married and have Christian babies. And there's multiple examples of it being successful in certain circumstances. So
me, that happened for me, right? I was somebody who should have been like used goods. And I'll tell you what the difference was. It's not because I'm the hottest. Okay. It's not because I didn't have baggage. It's not because I'm the perfect trad wife. It wasn't any of that. If you ask Andrew, like, because I've told this story before, but I tried to break up with him a couple times when we were dating, because I was like, you have this bright future and you're this great guy, and there's no reason for you to be interested in me. Like, it just doesn't even make sense. It even made me like question, like, what is his deal, And he was like, look, the whole reason I find you really appealing is I can tolerate you really well. Like, he's not somebody who just hangs out with women because he loves the company of women, but he was like, you are open to correction. You have some humility. You're not out here with this attitude of, there's just no man that meets my standards. There's just nobody that can measure up to what I want. I want a real man, and I need this, and he's got to be that. He was like, you're very humble and you're open to correction. So, like, this is the reality for you ladies who have already led the life. Now, I wasn't doing that. I wasn't promiscuous. I was just married and, in a long-term relationship. I didn't have a big body count. There wasn't anything like that. I never did hookups, dating, anything like that. So that was a plus. But I didn't have like a spotless virgin background either. It was that I was willing to be humble and look at myself and take correction and be submissive to a guy who is a very righteous and good person, but he's also not going to take any crap, right? So women have to really recalibrate their standards. And a lot of times, to be honest, the women who have these incredibly high standards don't meet those standards themselves. Okay, let's just be honest. A lot of them are overweight. I saw a girl on a Christian dating app talking about the guy has to be in shape and he has to have pretty teeth, and the girl was probably 300 pounds and had a big old gap in her teeth. And I'm like, what?
I'm not surprised.
But this is the dilute, and people, like, this is the thing on the Christian side that people don't want to talk about. They think I'm being mean. Rachel, why are you so mean? Why is Andrew so mean? You guys are just mean to women. And it's like, no. We love the women. We're trying to help the women by helping them see you're delusional. A lot of you are delusional. Maybe not all of you, but a lot of you are very delusional. You are not like, this is why on these dating podcasts they have the girls rate themselves. Okay, everybody thinks this is a humiliation ritual. I assure you it's not. Andrew's been backstage with these girls, he's talked to them. They all come out and tell you they're a 10. They could be 500 pounds and look like they just got dipped in a fryer, and they'll tell you they're a 10. Okay,
It's true.
it's
Well, and that's where
reality. This is reality.
these various podcasts and platforms have demonstrated that women have a drastically overinflated opinion of themselves because of the attention they can garner through social media, and
Yes.
they think attention garnered through social media equates to sort of like a video game, numbers in a category section for them being marriageable.
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Absolutely not the
And
case.
it's not Christ pilled to tell women you're perfect the way you are. What you're doing when you say that stuff to women is you are actually hindering them from their own salvation. I take it very seriously. You can say I'm mean. Everybody can make hit pieces on me, call me mean, say I trash women. I'm not trashing them. I'm saying you're not special. The men have to have humility and repentance to be saved, and so do you. So
Right.
having this attitude that the world gives you, or that these evangelical churches give you, where, every Mother's Day is a sermon about how great the mothers are, and every Father's Day is a sermon about how the men need to step it up, right? It's not fair treatment at all. And we're telling women, you're perfect the way you are. You don't need to change. There's no need to repent. Why on earth would a woman ever repent when all she's ever heard her whole life is, you're great the way you are? This is not Christian doctrine. And it's not Christian doctrine to tell men that they need to like submit to the whims of the
Right,
wife.
and I wanna say that because I've heard this rhetoric about serving your wife, though well, to a degree, yes, but the point that is not the Christ pill. The Christ pill is the man serves God. That's the point
Yes.
of our masculinity, that's the point
Yes.
of our purpose, that's the point of our ambition, that's the point of our skill set. What follows from serving God is then you are a provider, a protector, and a leader, both spiritually and physically, for the family. And that
Yeah.
is the way that you serve the family. But your focus has to be on God. And I've talked about this ad nauseum about Adam and
Yeah.
Eve. And again, what happens with the fall? Adam turns his back on God and listens to Eve. That is when the fall happened. The fall did not happen because Eve ate the apple. The
Right.
fall happened because the man listened to the woman and turned his back on the commandments of God. The Christ pill is reorienting the men towards God, but that does not include a sort of naivete about the state of dating within the church, nor feminizing men to think that they have to acquiesce to the desires of their wife, or they're not being a good husband. No, that is not how it works.
Right.
That is
Exactly.
and no woman actually wants that, because they want a man that will put his foot down and is going somewhere. And that's where the red pill is right.
Yeah.
You cannot live your life and need her. You
Right.
cannot need her. And again, even with my own situation, and I hate to bring anecdotal evidence into this, but in my context, this is one of the things that my fiance said recently that she loved about me, is that I did not need her. And I was very willing to go my own, because I'm already on my own mission. It's about
Yeah.
her accommodating to what I am trying to build and where I'm trying to go. And that's what the men want in regards to a woman to submit. But you can't operate on the basis that you as a man need this particular girl. You need her. Now, if you're married and you've already made those commitments, that's something else. We're talking about dating in the
Yeah.
modern world right now. And I've seen this so many times in the church, is that the woman is not really into, let's say, orthodoxy, because that is where the true church and the true body of Christ is. That, well, he's become orthodox, she's not really into it, they're going to try to make it
Yeah.
work. And we're talking about dating here, and the young man, maybe it's his first girlfriend, and he can't let her go because he's too scared about if he's ever going to be able to get another girlfriend in the future. That's part of the problem. That is what the red pill is telling you about the one-itis and the needing of a girl, and accommodating yourself and everything about you to her. That is not going to build genuine affection and attraction, and that's not going to instill the leadership and the masculine principles so that she'll submit to you.
Right. Yeah. I mean, my husband has said multiple times that There's going to be times where I'm going to say, this is what we're doing. And the reason for that is because, and I've heard Rollo say this. He said, what's good for me is also what's good for the people around me who depend on me, right? The
Right.
man has got to get his priorities straight and keep them straight, because if he starts deferring to women around him, or his wife, or Andrew with 4 daughters, if he starts deferring to the whims of all the women around him, it's going to destroy him, and we won't respect him, and nobody's going to follow him anyway, and then he's left completely neutered and hapless and unable to do any of the things that he's responsible for. Now, a big problem that we have with our message with the Christ pill is that we are in a society that focuses on rights, never on duties. Andrew has asked these girls, when he goes on these dating shows, he's asked multiple times, can you tell me what your rights are? And they'll go, yes, I have a right to free speech, and I have the right to love who I want, and I have the right to do what makes me happy. And they'll list all their rights. I have the right to vote. I have the right to be a CEO. I have the right to an education. I have the right to healthcare. They'll tell you all the
I have a
things they
right to
think they,
abortion and divorce as
yes,
well.
they have rights, and they have things they deserve. Women will tell you all day long about what they deserve. Okay. And Andrew says, okay, good. Now, can you tell me what duties you have outside yourself? And
Right.
they go, what do you mean? And he goes, do you have any duties to anyone other than yourself? And they're like, they'll sit there and just go, and just, you can see that there's like smoke coming out of their ears. They've never even thought of it. So part of what the red pill talks about with framing is this kind of stuff, where you have to understand women are not duty oriented generally.
Right.
Can they
True.
become that way? Are some that way? Yes. That's one of the things Andrew says he loves best about me, is that I'm dutiful and responsible to everyone around me first. I don't do everything based on my feelings, what makes me feel good, what my desires and wants and passions are. I respond to what my duties are first, as a
And that's what
mother and as
marriage
a
is
wife.
about.
That's
And that's what
exactly what it's about.
and
But
living up
we're
to that standard.
we're so comfortable saying that to men. We're so comfortable telling men what their responsibilities are and what their duties are, and men grow up thinking, and Rollo is right about this too, men have actually been brainwashed in this day and age to be so dutiful and so focused on the needs of everyone around them to their own detriment.
Yep.
This is why male unaliving of themselves is so high, because
Yep.
men are taught, you don't matter. You
Yep.
need to provide value for everyone else around you, and we don't care what you want. Suck it up, buddy. And women are taught the exact opposite.
Yep.
If you start dating a girl who says she's Christian, and you ask her if she thinks that, what do you think a Christian woman has any duties in life outside herself? And she's kind of like at a loss, doesn't know, can't think of anything. You might want to think about that, because we should be telling women that they do have duties to society. For one thing, we have duty to be mothers. I can't tell you, it's been, I want to say, 5 times now in debates that Andrew has asked women, if we if feminism leads to no birth rate, such a low birth rate that society collapses and human beings cease to exist, are you cool with that? Like, is that okay with you? And every single one of them has said yes. Every single one of them has said, if humanity has to die out because I'm really not, like, ew, kids are germ factories and it seems like a lot of work, and then I can't take my weekend vacations and all this stuff, so far they seem perfectly happy to abort everyone out of existence and just never become moms. And it's all about, I deserve and what I want. And this is why their criteria is always 6 foot, 6 figures, six pack, all this stuff, because,
Right.
like, what am I getting out of it?
Right.
So
It's consumer culture, and that's both within the church and in the secular world. So, in regards to some of the shortcomings of the red pill, which I'll agree with many of the guys um in talking about the Christ pill, is that it is good at describing. As I said, it's not good at prescribing. And according to Rollo and that group, they're not trying to offer prescriptions
right.
necessarily. Now, it fails to have an objective morality. And this is where, when Jay and I talked about the red pill and the manosphere, this is a philosophical critique
Yes.
of the worldview in and of itself, because it's built on, again, evolutionary theory, and it appeals to all these different things that, in a sort of materialist worldview actually can account for. And so it fails to have an objective morality. And therefore, within the red pill or the manosphere, unless it's Christ pilled, you really can't call a woman immoral. And this is where we've seen a sort of conceding to feminism as well. It's just going to be that way into the future. There's nothing we can do about it. So there we must just sort of correct course on, as men, what we expect and what we're going to do to deal with feminism into the future. And so it just, red pill without a transcendental metaphysical worldview leads to a dog eat dog world. And therefore you're just going to get men stacking bodies to try to get with young, people, women with a higher SMV. And it's just going to lead to, and then they're going to be hypergamous, and it's just going to lead to this dog eat dog vicious cyclical effect. And as they've highlighted, some red pill guys, and I'm not necessarily talking about Rolo in this regard, but some red pill guys absolutely advocate for more degeneracy to combat female degeneracy. And again, it just leads to that vicious cycle. So those are certainly some of the shortcomings in the red pill, the manosphere, generally speaking, these sort of pickup game gurus that the Christ pill is obviously responding to. And somebody mentioned in the chat, I think it was Frankie D going by, that, what I'm saying is not that every man has to have his own business and he needs to be making six figures. That's not what I'm saying. And if that is the way that people are taking it, then you're misconstruing what I'm saying in regards to having your purpose. Does not mean you have to have your own business. You can just be a skilled man. You can be a skilled laborer. You can be skilled as a whatever it is, whatever job, whatever niche in society. And sure, you can be a good employee. So, I am not saying that every man has to make six figures, have a Lambo, and do all this stuff. Absolutely not. But at the same time, what is the remedy when the majority of women don't find the majority of men attractive, and the majority of men are aware that the majority of women are too promiscuous to actually be marriageable? I think the only option is that men do have to become higher value to be a little bit more attractive to women. But at the same side, a lot of those women aren't marriageable. And it's not that if you've made mistakes before, you can't be forgiven or can't have a successful marriage in the future. You can.
Yeah.
But not everybody has genuinely repented, and not everybody is in a genuine state to offer that to another person. And so that's where this has been totally lost. And I'm sort of reiterating it again, but it's been totally lost on the Christ pill that phenomenon still exists inside the church. And that is a real problem. And every Orthodox parish can probably attest to this, that, there are maybe a few of the single girls and there may be many more of the single guys, but how come they're not getting together? Because what we're talking about in concerning them not finding them attractive, not seeing them as what they deserve, inflated expectations, this is coloring Christian dating life. And so it's not a simple solution that's going to solve this. It's very complex. And even with the Christ pill, it's still very complex. And this nuance needs to be addressed.
Yeah, I think so too. Like, there's a funny meme I always share where it's like a girl praying and she goes, "God, send me a pious, Christian, wonderful man to marry." And then Jesus sends her the man and she goes, "Ew, he's 5'9". It's like, how are we going to tell the men, suck it up and wife up the 304s with the history, but then we're not going to tell the women, like, maybe you also have to temper your expectations. But this is the thing, right? And I don't know what to do about this. I like you said, I don't think there's an easy answer. The sexual revolution let a genie out of the bottle that I don't think we can stuff back into the bottle. And
not for generations to come.
No, yeah. It's going to take, I've said this before too, but it's going to be either like a long protracted thing where eventually society starts to realize, and this might happen because of birth rates, because of any number of things that could kind of make things bad enough where the women kind of go, okay, like right now, here's a great example. Right now, we have an issue on the border.
Right.
And I don't see the feminists packing their stuff and running down there to defend the border. In fact, I see all the Supreme Court women voting to let everybody in.
All 4 women on the Supreme Court, no matter party affiliation, voted for an open border. Come
Yep,
on.
exactly.
And you want
So
them to
I
leave
think
your church?
well, but the thing is it's like they will bring enough ruin at some point that I think people will go, okay, we tried this feminism stuff, we tried this egalitarianism stuff, it doesn't really work. That would be the ideal scenario. Even that's going to be painful, but that's the good option. The bad option is things will get so bad that strong men are going to rise up and put a stop to it, and it's going to be very not pretty for people. I think it'll probably, based on history, go like the way of the Roman Empire and things like that, where there's this long general decline and then there's a renaissance, that will probably be Orthodox, because Orthodoxy is growing. And Andrew says this too. Andrew agrees with everything you've said tonight and everything I've said tonight, as far as I know. I don't want to speak for him, but he says this too. He says Protestant churches aren't even going to be here soon. They're
No.
dying out. Protestantism is dying, and the ones that are around are not even having a lot of kids. They're all getting
Right.
divorced. They're happy with their birth control, and they're not going to have big families. The Catholics are going through it right now with the Skittle stuff in their church and everything else, and a lot of Catholics are falling away, and the ones that are staying are having families, but they're a lot smaller in number than the secularists and the evangelicals and all this. Orthodoxy is the only alternative. It's
It
the
is.
only alternative that
The
gives
future.
you the true Christ pill, as you outlined it earlier with your little mini speech that you gave us there that I loved so
Sorry.
much. No, I loved it. It was great. Those are the moments that everybody watches these streams for. Everybody wants, the DPH rant about this sort of stuff. And it was perfect. And this is like, I think it's going to be an individual solution. A lot of people aren't going to make it,
Right.
unfortunately. A lot of people are going to be victims of feminism and gynocentrism and this inverted order. There's going to be a lot. There's already been a lot. There's already been a ton of families and people who've just been ruined by this garbage, had their lives and their families absolutely dissolved and torn apart, and the church couldn't do anything, and they lost faith in their Protestant church, right? In their Baptist church, and they left. So orthodoxy can offer all of the answers to this. It does offer all the answers to this, as long as we can keep at bay the people who want to, let's just talk about deaconesses. Why can't we just talk
Exactly.
about it? Can we just have a little conversation? We just want to talk about it.
No.
No, no, it's not something that's open for discussion. It's been laid to rest. It's been settled. It's not something that needs to be open. If we can keep that sort of stuff at bay, the church, and I think we will, because the church will ultimately prevail, but this is the only alternative. What else are you going to do? I mean, like you said, the red pill's biggest weakness is it does not give you an objective moral framework to work from.
Right.
That's why, even though Andrew is not a Christian apologist and he does not have a ministry, he argues from this worldview that we share, you and I, and most, probably half the chat shares, and it brings people to orthodoxy without him trying. Because what, like, just tonight he had a debate with a trans person, absolutely crumbled the person's worldview to the point that he admitted, I should, probably detransition. I probably shouldn't be doing this at all. Just absolutely dismantled this person's entire worldview.
Was that the
He
one that you did tonight?
Yeah, that was the one he did tonight. And it because of that, and people witness this. Same thing happened with the Matt Dillahunty debate. People will witness him dismantle this false worldview, point out all its flaws, completely dismantle it, and it leaves the person going, well, how did you figure this out? Andrew, how by what means do you have access to this truth? Because you seem to be able to dismantle everything else. And he says, go to the
Orthodoxy.
Orthodox Discord, find Chase Haggard, go to a local Orthodox church, stay after for coffee hour and talk to the priest. That's where you're going to find the truth.
Right.
I'm not a minister. I'm not doing a ministry. But if you want to know why I have a clear moral framework that really can't be beaten, this is why. And
Yeah.
yes, I'm a guy that smokes. And yes, I'm a guy that isn't perfect, but this is how I can distill the truth down this way.
Right.
If we can do that, this is why I think it's important to interact with red pill spheres. And I know it's not for everyone. Certainly not everybody's built for that, but I'm going to, and Andrew's going to, because we do have something to offer people. If you're in the red pill sphere, you already probably know a lot of what's wrong and you're looking for solutions. And a lot of men, especially, are looking for meaning and purpose. Well,
Right.
this is what can give it to them. Now, you can't just tell them go watch Father Spirit on Bailey. I wish we could just tell them to do that, and they would go watch him, and they would fall in love with orthodoxy and join the church. Usually what has to happen is you have to crush the worldview they already hold. You have to shatter the illusions that they're already operating off of, what they think the world is, because the human mind is very powerful, and the worldviews we hold determine how we operate. So we have to get better at crushing those worldviews. So this is why, like, there's this big debate that's about to supposedly happen. We'll see if it happens. They're trying to work out the details. But Andrew's going to go in on the red pill side, and people were freaking out. They were like, "What do you mean?" Right? And he's like, "Calm down. You don't even know yet. So like, don't get all excited." But he wants to go on there to say, "Here's everything we've been saying," and do it
Right.
the way he does it, so that people will say, "Oh, this guy seems to have some stuff figured out. He seems to be able to crush everybody else's worldview. I'm going to go where he found this truth." That's All of us have our way of witnessing our faith, and that's how he does it. So the more people we can get who are on our side, but can really reach out to the secular world and to the red pill sphere and offer up the real truth, the real red pill, the real truth pill, which is
Right.
orthodoxy, the better.
Right. And we got some great super chats. We're going to be reading all those in just a few minutes, guys. So if you have more comments or questions about this topic, you want to share maybe your thoughts on the differences between the red pill and the Christ pill, or maybe where you think we missed something, feel free to send those in. I'll read all these, even the ones that have come up on screen here in just a few. But another comment was made by Frankie D in the chat that I think needs to be addressed. And I've dealt with this. I am not a coach, but I do offer one-on-one sessions on guys that want to talk about really anything. And sometimes it's philosophy, but increasingly it's been Orthodox men who have put the dots together. They know the conspiracy theories. They know the theology. They've come to the Orthodox Church, and now they're often in the church. And we're talking about dating. And Frankie D brought up the problem with male expectations. And this is going to be a
Yeah.
problem too, because, and I don't mean to put anybody on blast, but I've talked with guys and they have very low body counts. They're good, genuine guys. These are good guys, but they still think that they're going to get a 20-year-old virgin.
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, the math,
Yeah.
you don't realize what the state of the world is. And
Right.
this is a difficult conversation on who's going to have to make compromises if you want to get married. And at the
Yeah.
same time, do it in a dutiful Orthodox context where people realize the standards and expectations in regards to the duties between the husband and the wife. But I think it's almost irony, right? That for some people, they were maybe in that simp community. They've come out of it. They found their masculinity. Hopefully, they've come to the Orthodox Church. And then you have the 304s, or the people that had their hot girl summers in the 20s. And unfortunately, those are the two parties that are going to have to make the most concessions and compromises.
Yeah.
And it's an irony, right? Because some of these girls made money off the same guys that are maybe they've bettered themselves and they become better men, but those are the marriageable men for the category that they now exist in the eyes of the church. And
Yeah.
so male expectations have to be in the context of everything that's being brought that you're bringing to the table. And I hate to be so crass as like it's a numbers game and you're a video character and it's like how much your
Right.
categories
Right.
are filled up. I don't mean it to sound like that, but for a general conversation to some degree, yeah, exactly. Man up and marry those 304s. I do not advocate for that. And I think that is such a disingenuous point that the people that want to criticize the Christ pill want to see. But
Yeah.
um, that should not be the solution. Nobody should be telling young men to just go ahead and marry a girl that had a very promiscuous past and she's been a Christian for, a year or 2 years. Absolutely not. But because of the sexual marketplace value and because of some of the red pill rhetoric, men also have inflated expectations on what they think they're going to get.
Yeah.
And that's a difficult conversation to have as well.
It is, and this is why I'm always in trouble, to be honest. And I always say, for people who think I'm a grifter, Lord have mercy, I could have picked 1,000 things that I could have taken far less abuse and made like real money off of. I don't, my little YouTube channel doesn't make much. My little book doesn't make much. I'm out here saying this because just like Patrick, I have children. I'm thinking about my grandchildren and their children because this is a cross generational problem. And I'm hoping that maybe my great grandchildren will look back and say, wow, great grandma was really trying. She was like figuring out like what was going on and trying to contribute something to make stuff better for us, as an elder woman that I am now. But here's the thing that nobody wants to talk about on our side, which is that, okay, if women have agency and we are fully responsible and equal adults, then that means that we have to suffer the consequences of our choices. And when you tell the men, you just have to wife up the 304s, the woman is not,
She's
you're
not held responsible
suggesting,
for the
yeah, you're
decisions she's made.
suggesting
It's
that there
totally
should be no
yeah,
consequences. Yeah.
it's
So
totally a
it's like,
cop out for them. And
yeah, it
and
is.
and any Christian man who's telling young men that, you should reject outright, because
Yeah.
that is not a recipe for successful Christian traditional marriage. And that is
No, and
not a recipe
that's
for not
not that's not historically how the church handled it. Like if you look at
exactly.
somebody like Saint Mary of Egypt, she didn't go get a husband, okay? She spent the rest of her life as an ultra pious monastic, and that's what many women who, had that background did. Now, if you are lucky enough to truly repent and find a guy who doesn't mind that you have a past, again, I wasn't promiscuous, but I had kids from a former relationship that, it's like, well, this is whether it's fair or not, whether you think I deserve it or not, this is the situation. And you have to be realistic, just like men do. If a man is 5'6" and bald at 22, that's his reality. And he knows that, well, for this cuts 90% of women out for me because women generally don't like short guys and they don't like bald guys. And nobody thinks it's wrong for women to have preferences. This is another thing. Women are allowed to have all these preferences and all of these, he has to meet all my standards. And nobody, they go, yeah, girl, you don't lower your standards for nobody.
And
You
that's
keep
where
your
Jordan
standards high.
Peterson, I think he hasn't given great advice, because he basically tells these young guys, well, if women don't find you attractive, there's probably a good reason. Well, okay, for some men, maybe, but for the
Yeah,
vast majority, he doesn't understand the state of modern dating, and
right.
that the inflation and the outrageous expectations that young women have, that are totally, they want men that are totally outside their league. And nobody
Yeah.
wants to say that, what are you talking about? Like, you can't get that and you don't deserve that.
Exactly. So, yeah, it's like if men just have to suck it up and deal with the reality that if you're under 5'9", your chances of getting a chick are gonna go down. I'm sorry, but they're gonna drop like a rock. If you are, a guy who prematurely goes bald, you better hope you're huge and jacked, right? Because if you're short and prematurely bald, well, it's like you're kind of out of luck. And that's men have to deal with that reality. So it's like women, if you want to say, I'm an independent woman, I can live my own life, I can make my own choices, I have agency, and I have all these rights, and I have all these things I deserve, then you also need to live with the consequences of your decisions. And you
Yes.
can't, women love to do this thing and where they go, I was a different person back then, right? And this is one of the reasons I've been really open about that I didn't do that. And that's literally what saved me. Again, I'm not a supermodel. I'm not some figure everyone should look to and say, oh, I need to be like her and live like her and do everything she did. No, I screwed up. I made dumb choices when I was young out of naivety. Again, wasn't promiscuous. I was just naive. And I thought it was fine to live with my boyfriend. And, I picked poorly. I chose poorly. And you live with that. You live with that because it's part of being a independent woman with agency. And so if you get a guy who's a good quality guy, don't give him attitude. Don't challenge him. Don't compete with him. Be the Titus 2 wife that submits and serves him. And if you do that, you'll be shocked at men will forgive a lot. Men are far
Yes.
less picky generally. I know
It's
there's
true.
some that there are definitely some who have some weird expectations because they think they're gonna get like a virgin anime waifu or something weird.
Yeah.
But generally, men are like, I'll take the four if if she doesn't give
If
me a lot
she's
of
loyal and she
yeah,
supports you and serves you and the family, Like, that's where that there needs to be a real conversation there,
Yeah.
in regards
Yeah.
to the point of the Christ pill is to build strong families. And so trying to find, your Christian dime piece, your priorities are already out of whack
Yeah.
because you're not selecting based on what's actually gonna produce a good household and a good wife. The
Right.
the the
Exactly.
standards for having the best sex and the best orgasm is not the same standard for selecting a wife for the rest of your life to raise your children and build a family.
And guess what? We all get old. The wall remains undefeated, everybody. All of us ladies get old. The men get old too. I just feel like aging is kinder to men in general. Not always, but in general, it's kinder to men than it is to women. But like, we're all going to get older. So even if we're smoking hot at 20, we're all going to be 50 if we are lucky enough to live that long. Okay. And if you have a wife that gives you 5 babies, she's going to have stretch marks and, gravity takes effect. So you don't want to build your life off of that. I always tell women not to build their life around their looks because it's so temporary. It's just this tiny window of your life that evaporates very quickly. You don't ever think it will when you're 20, ladies. You think it's, yeah, I'm going to be hot forever. I had a woman sit next to me at a live event and tell me she was going to be sexy at 70, and I was like, "Whoo, wall's going to be rough on her."
Right,
But it's the same for men. You don't want to choose a wife based on that because it's temporary. It's a wonderful thing when you're young and hot, but it doesn't last for any of
right.
us. Even Jennifer Aniston and Madonna and all these women that were sex symbols when they were young are now old. And guess what? Even if they're well preserved, they're still older. So you can't do things based on that.
And there's another point that has been popular in the chat that I want to talk about that again obviously is related to my own life, and people kept talking about passports, passport bros. And that's a real option. I mean, and I'll just be frank, that was the way that I wasn't planning. I wouldn't consider myself a passport bro, but certainly I'm in that category because my fiance is a Volga German, so she's a mixture of Russian and German culture, and they're a very traditional Christian family. They're Protestant, and she's Orthodox, so she became Orthodox before I met her. But that's also a real conversation because I've again interacted, as you know, we've talked about this privately. We're not going to
Yeah.
speak about any details publicly, but I was in the Orthodox dating circles in America, and again, everything that we've brought up was true. And that does not mean there have been fabulous married couples, American Orthodox couples that have found each other in the United
Yeah.
States. So this is a nuanced conversation where you don't outright reject, oh, American women. At the same time, we can highlight that there are different uh, cultural values that have seeped into American women, and they don't see the world the same way as Eastern European women have.
Yeah.
And so, again, orthodoxy, obviously, Eastern Europe is Orthodox.
Right.
And one of the things that I've talked about with priests is in the Western world, and especially in America and Canada, many of the converts to the Orthodox Church are young men. According to a recent survey, it's like 70+% of all converts into the Orthodox Church within the last couple of years are men under the age of 40.
Yep.
And so we have more men in the church than we have women converting right now. In Eastern Europe, from what I've heard from priests, is they tend to have a lot of young women, a lot of single women in the churches that are Orthodox, traditional girls that aren't, ran through as the kids like to talk about. But and that needs to be a real conversation, a real option. I mean, because my experience is that that is somewhat true, that women from more traditional cultures, people, Eastern European women, they tend to not have some of the same values that American women grew up in. And at the same time, I've met plenty of American women that grew up in very good families that in some way they were
Yeah.
sheltered and protected, and they see through the lies of modern day feminism and the sexual liberation movement. So
Yeah.
it's nuanced. There's good people on both sides,
Right.
but for some of the Orthodox guys, that might be an option.
Well, another weakness that we should talk about when we're talking about this reality that a lot of Christians don't want to face is that the latest data I've seen shows that young men in America are going more conservative and more religious.
Right.
and that women in America are going more left-wing progressive
Right.
and more atheist. And so the men and the women just continue to move away from each other, and there's no easy answer to that. There's no easy answer to what we're going to do about this, because here's the thing you have to think about. I'll steel man the modern woman's position for you guys. I'm going to be super charitable because I do understand where they're coming from. Imagine you're a 20-year-old girl and you're really attractive, and you've got all kinds of help getting, college, funding, your loans and your what do you call them? The things that money for college. Or you could do your OnlyFans, or you could just be an Instagram model. There's girls who just all they do is post hottie pictures to Instagram, and they can make a six-figure salary off of that stuff because they get sponsorships and memberships and simp bucks, and they have pay piggies and all this other stuff. And even just for the average woman like me, who's like an adjustable 6, okay? Like I'm not super hot, but I'm not like, a 3 either. I'm just a normal average woman. At 20 years old, tell me why. Like, what would be your selling point? Because I always say I'm trying to, if this is a grift, I'm selling the least sexy product on earth, which is be humble, be repentant, serve your husband, serve your family, focus on your duties that are outside of yourself rather than your rights and what you think you deserve. That's a tough sell, because young women today go, why? The world is literally made for me. It's my oyster. I have a digital, technologically advanced world created by men, maintained by men for my convenience, that allows me to get a phony baloney degree in interior design and a cushy office job where I just, design curtains and pillows or whatever for my clients. And then I go home and I've got my apartment and my cat and my Netflix and my takeout. They're Chelsea handlers, and they look at it and they go, why do I want to go through pregnancy and childbirth multiple times? Why do I want to have to get up every day and take care of my family, whether I'm sick, even if I have a headache, even if I'm tired? I'm going to miss out on the partying. I'm going to miss out on, the like what the girls do now, where they take a van and they make it into a little apartment and they go road tripping and they have wanderlust. Like, the world is literally created as this giant temptation oyster for young women, where they can have anything they want simply because they're young women. It's it's a very tough sell, and the Christian side has done a very poor job of ministering to these women and explaining to them why this is a trap, how it is a worldly trap that they're falling into, that makes them think things don't apply to them. There's no consequences. They have all the time in the world. I hear women, I debate women who tell me they're going to wait until they're 40 to have kids. And they think this is realistic. They think, oh, I'll just go get me some in vitro and I'll just have kids when I'm 40 and I'm not hot anymore. And until then, I'm gonna ride the carousel. They live in delusion land, okay?
Right.
And the church has to do a better job of explaining to women what the pitfalls are, showing
Yes.
them, yeah, this looks good. It's a Faustian bargain you're taking, that you build your life around your youth, your fertility, and your looks, and you don't even realize that's what you're doing. You don't even know that's what you're doing because you were born into a world that literally revolves around you. The Disney princess world, that you should have everything you want. You should never be unhappy. No one should ever be mean to you, and everything should just, yeah, you'll have to work towards your goals. But I mean, for girls, that's like, oh, I get a journal and I write down my goals, and I'm going to drink more water and I'm going to do more yoga,
Yep.
and this is what their lives are like. So we have to give them a good, compelling reason to be willing to sacrifice a little bit, because most men are more open to the idea that, yeah, I have to provide value. I have to do some
Yeah.
self-sacrifice.
And we're way harder on the men, and rightfully so, they can take it.
Yeah.
But even in the church, there's too much of a softness on the rhetoric regards to some of the older women who enter the church and want to get married, and that needs to be addressed. And there's another point that I wanted to make, because this is a central point to my thesis in regards to the Christ pill, and it was just brought up by, and I'll read this super chat just because it pertains to actually what I wrote down and wanted to write next. Bruce Roberts throws in $10. Thank you so much, Bruce Roberts. He says, don't fall into despair, brother. And I'm 5'8", black with a few extra pounds, and at my worst, still attracted an attractive woman before catechism, constantly approved, trust Christ, you'll be good. And one of the things that I want to tell men is that this isn't going to be easy. So I do not want to give you a naive utopian pill that some of the Christian guys online want to give you. What I do want to give you is hope. And I believe that if you are truly on this journey and you're becoming the best man that you can, and you are an Orthodox Christian and you're pursuing everything that you know you need to be doing, I think providence will unfold.
Yeah.
And I think that you can meet the right woman. At the same time, you can't, that's where the one-eyed is, just because the cute girl at the parish, you can't say, oh, she's the one.
Yeah.
No, step back, focus on your goals, focus on God, build yourself. But like Bruce Roberts says, it doesn't matter how short you are, doesn't matter where you're starting from, how little money you make, work on it, improve yourself, follow Christ. And I believe I have so many guys that I've talked to in the last 3 years. So many of them have been able to find a woman and get married, and they're happy. And these are good women, and God willing, they have very successful marriages. And so
Yeah.
everything we said, I don't want people to take it too much as a black pill,
No.
because I think with the Christ pill comes hope. I think the black pill is really the next pill after the red pill,
Yeah.
because the red pill doesn't offer the prescriptions and really doesn't offer a hope. And that's why you get the conflict between Chase and Myron in regards to basically acquiescing to the feminist movement and the standards of today's society. No, we don't acquiesce to it. We stand up for what's right and virtuous, but do not give up hope.
Right.
Christ and providence can occur, and you don't know. There's a girl on her journey right now who may be watching this stream, and in a year from now, you guys meet at the right time when both of you guys can offer each other what each one is looking for.
Yeah, I should say too that I get daily DMs and emails from young women. I went to a baptism a few months ago, and one of the young ladies at the parish came up to me, and she was the cutest thing. Oh my gosh, this adorable little girl. And I say little because she was just like small. She wasn't young. She's probably maybe 22, I would say, like early 20s. And she was like, "Hi, are you Mrs. Wilson?" And I was like, "Yeah." And she's like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so happy to meet you." And she had this little pregnant belly, and she's like, "This is my husband. We just got married like a year ago, and I've been watching all your stuff, and I have your book, and I've decided that, I'm going to quit my job and stay home, and I want to homeschool our kids." And at first my parents were like really opposed to it, and it was kind of almost making me feel like it was a bad decision, but you kind of helped me articulate to them, like, and defend my choice and feel confident in my choice to quit my career and stay home. And I just want to thank you for that. So there's young women that are hearing what I say, and they do listen, and they're like, yeah, she's right. Feminism is bullshit. It's not actually a good deal for women. It's not actually, oh, I'm living the life. It's actually a giant sham.
Right.
Right. So there's young women who are hearing the message, and that's why I'm here, and that's why I'm willing to take all the abuse that I get from the haters, because these young girls actually keep me going. They're like so inspiring to me that they'll write me or they'll meet me and tell me like, "Yeah, I'm going to stay home and have kids, and I'm going to homeschool them, and this is my wonderful husband, and we're Orthodox." And it's, I mean, as even if there's only a handful of them, I'm going to keep going just for them.
Absolutely.
So those
Absolutely.
those girls are real, and they do
Yes.
exist.
They are real. And again, if they're actually pursuing truth and they're really trying to figure out things, eventually I believe all people find the Orthodox Church who don't stop seeking for the truth.
Yeah.
And there's a hope for everybody.
Yeah.
But again, people just need to keep their eyes open
Yeah.
and not be overly pessimistic due to the red pill, and not be overly optimistic and sort of have this false naivete due to the Christ pill. But the
Yeah.
Christ pill is what makes you a man of God, makes you a
Well,
warrior of Christ. The red pill is what allows you to assess the values that have seeped into the average woman and man in
yep.
modern day dating and intersexual dynamics. And so we have to take the good, leave the bad, but
Right.
understand the reality of what we're up against, and that this is not going to be easy for anybody, man or woman.
No.
And then if the women have already succumbed to her hot girl summer and the feminist ideology, that again, everything's an exchange of your soul, everything's an exchange of your value. And they have to realize that there was a decision that has already been made, and they have to deal with those consequences. And then men the same way. So I think it's very hopeful. And that's where I think our conversation today was trying to build this bridge that seems like
Yeah.
nobody's articulating online, and
Yes.
that there's nuance here. There's good on both sides, and there's things that we need to watch out for on both sides.
Yes.
But as an Orthodox Christian, I think there's a lot of hope, because I'm telling you one thing, our church is not going to stop growing.
Right.
From today to tomorrow to the next decade, it's only going to get more and more viable as a source for people to find marriageable partners. And that is a hope for all of us. And so the
Yeah.
men, we have to become better. We have to become higher value. And the women, they need to learn what exactly a godly woman is. And if they succumb to everything that we've talked about, then they have to realize that they may not be able to get what they want in regards to the commodity and the consumerism, but they can get a wonderful husband that will provide them with everything that a genuine sacramental marriage offers. And so
Yeah.
what do you really want? Do you want to be a mid 30-year-old woman in the Orthodox Church, but still have the expectations of your secular dating life when you were 24? Or do you want to get
Right.
married to a good man, make a lifelong commitment, and be there for each other when you both die and have generations of children?
Yeah. Yeah, and another big thing Andrew talks about a lot is materialism. The reason nobody's getting married and having babies right now is because everybody is so focused on material success, material conditions. And I understand to a degree right now, like the economy is so bad and things are so expensive and it's really tough. And for a lot of people, the idea of starting a family is like really daunting. And I totally get that. There's definitely ways it can be done. You might have to move, you might have to live in a different place and make some sacrifices. But this is the thing, where what we keep having to tell people is you're going to have to make some sacrifices. And in the
Yeah.
current materialistic secular paradigm, people hear that and they're like, no,
Yeah,
why
not
would I do
interested.
that? Yeah. But here's the thing about that, people out there who think that we're naive and silly and that I'm
Or
selling,
mean, yeah.
yeah, or that we're mean, is that you're going to suffer regardless. Okay. Life is going to include suffering and it's going to include sacrifice. It's just like with your health, right? You might have noticed I've dropped a whole bunch of weight in the last year. That's because you either have the pain and suffering that comes with being sick and fat, or you have the pain and suffering that comes with getting your ass in the gym and eating stuff you don't really want to eat and not eating the things you really want to eat and all that other stuff. This is the same way. You either choose to what we do in Orthodox marriage, which is die unto yourself and wear the
Exactly.
crowns of martyrdom and sacrifice yourself to become something better, where you are one flesh with your husband and you have what I have, which is a guy who is, we're never, no one's ever going to pull us apart. If that was going to happen, it would have happened by now, I'll tell you that. And we're best friends and we're so close you can't get daylight between us. And I'll tell you what, we're both in our 40s now, and that's extremely valuable because from here on out, we're going to get older. We're going to have health problems. We're going to go through struggles, and we have each other. We already have this great, solid foundation. Now, you could take the opposite approach and do the easy shit when you're young, where you're traveling and you're partying and you're having fun, and men come and go or women come and go, and you're having all your fun. But then you're going to get to the second half of your life, and that's where your hardships are going to come because you're going to be alone. You won't have built a legacy. You won't have any meaning. Your life's going to be empty and lonely, things like that. And there won't be children who are going to be there to care for you when you're old. You won't have someone to grow old with. Like, it's like all things in life, where it's like either you're going to put in the hard work on the front end and make those investments and have the discipline and give up some things now so that you can have this bigger payoff down the road, or you're going to be a hedonist and a materialist and you're going to go after those things now. So
Right.
I know that's not a sexy message. I know it's not
It's
like,
not a sexy message, but it
yeah,
offers meaning. And as you
right.
pointed out, maybe before, and this will be the last thing we got a lot of super chats and a lot of people have great comments. So I want to get through those. But marriage is about a self-sacrificing. Again, in the Orthodox Church, you either devote your life to a self-sacrifice to Christ, i.e., monasticism, or you get married and you devote yourself to the other person. And that is both for the woman to the man, and that is for the man to the woman. But that's not the serving of the woman like the Protestants talk about, where you're constantly accommodating to all her needs and desires. It's a self-sacrifice out of your devotion to God, and that you're going to live up to these dutiful responsibilities. and be the man that, again, Christ calls us to be. Read Proverbs, read scripture. What does it say that a man is and a husband is? And look and see what a woman is and a wife is, and make sure that then you choose accordingly. So,
Yes.
yeah, that last point about self-sacrifice and suffering, that's true for all of it. And so
Yep.
if you want the meaning, if you want a person that's going to be there when you're both 80 years old, God willing, we all live that long,
Yeah.
and you have children and you want to see your grandchildren and you want to see them grow and you want to see them at their sports games, like, you need to find a real life partner. And that is
Yeah.
different than from just finding all these sort of commodities of the biggest boobs and butt and the small waist. And we need to look at a different standard, and everybody's going to have to make compromises, because what we're up against is not going to change
Right.
in the next decade or so. And if you're looking to
Yeah.
get married, you need to realize that.
Yep.
So
100%.
all right. So, Rachel, let's get into some of these super chats. We got a bunch
Yeah.
of great comments. And again, if anybody wants to make more, ask us questions, feel free to. The first one we got over here on YouTube comes from the Smoking Patriot, throws in $10 and says, have seen many single mothers who had hot girl 20s come to church and complain about no real men to wife them up. All the alpha Christian men I know don't go to church case they were pushed out. Well, most of the alpha Christian men I know are in the church. Just in my opinion, they're usually, the ones that I know, are either Orthodox or Catholic. And obviously, I
Yeah.
don't support Catholicism because of the papacy, but that's just been my experience. The men that are sort of the Christian Chads are typically either Orthodox or Catholic. So, not sure which church you're referring to, the Smoking Patriot. I do appreciate the support, my brother. But you make a really good point in regards to these women coming to the church, as we've articulated, and they're expecting the same status of man that they could have got in their 20s when they were living up their lives and doing everything that they wanted to do. And that's true in the Orthodox Church or the Catholic Church. And so that's going to be a compromise and a conversation amongst those quote unquote Chad Christian men, the alpha Christian men, and the quote unquote hot Christian girls, based on what it is that they truly value and what they're looking for.
Yeah.
So,
I think maybe he's also referring to Protestant churches, because
yeah,
this
that's
is a
what it seems
huge,
like.
yeah, it's a huge phenomenon in Protestantism. Almost no men are going to Protestant
True.
churches at
And
this
same in
point.
the
It's
black
so
church, right?
bad.
There's an article I read about the black church about,
Yeah,
you know, good black men. They're not going to, because it's too feminine, it's too
it is.
emotional, and that's
They
where
don't wanna,
Protestantism.
the last thing men need is to go to yet another thing where they get lectured about how they're the problem, and
Exactly.
the women are fine and they're the problem. So it's
Right.
like, and that's a lot of those churches. It's a lot of them.
Absolutely. And so I can totally see what the Smoking Patriot is talking about,
Yeah.
and especially in the Protestant churches. I just don't know a whole lot of Protestant men that I at least hang out with or associate. Obviously, I know of people,
Yeah.
but most of the men that I associate in regards to these circles are usually either Orthodox or Catholic. So, but he's totally right. They do get pushed out because the Protestant churches are way too worldly and feminine.
Yep.
And then this came in over on your channel. Darian Murphy threw in $5 to you and said, in Proverbs 31, the first thing it says about the Proverbs 31 woman is a wife of noble character who can find, meaning she is extremely rare. And another great point. And that's
Yeah.
where, and I'll let you speak to this, but that's why becoming the best version of yourself as a man is important, because of providence. It is hard to
Right.
find. And if your focus is on finding her, I don't think you can. If your focus is on God, he can bring to you somebody of that higher noble character. But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would agree with everything you just said. And it is extremely rare. It is extremely rare because I know I've said this a million times, but when women are young and fertile, you go from being a child, and when you're a little girl, the whole world dotes on you, right? Because you're a cute little girl. Then you hit puberty, and the whole world dotes on you because you're young and fertile and attractive. And it doesn't matter if you think that should be the case, that's how it is. So then a girl who's of a young marrying age, 20, 22, 23, has grown up with this idea that the world revolves around her and that this attention will always be there. They don't know another world. They don't know the world boys know, where if you say the wrong thing, you get punched in the face. They don't
Absolutely.
they don't know that world. So it's easier for them to be, let's just use an easy word and say, spoiled. But I will tell you, my grandma is about to turn 98 in March,
Glory
April
to
1st,
her.
actually.
Many
Yeah.
years to her.
I know, isn't she? She's so awesome. She's amazing. But she tells us about how when she was young, because she was born in 1926, and when she was young, her mother would say, you need to try to get the best guy you can by the time you're about 20 or 22. She would say, like, pick, you'll have the biggest pool of the best guys to choose from when you're young. So, and she I interviewed her on my channel. If you guys want to go watch, she's like, our mother scared us. She would always tell us, like, if you're going to get pregnant if you even think about doing anything like that. And she's like, it really scared us. Me and my sister, we really didn't even think about it because we did not want to be the girl in school that was pregnant in 1942 or something. You
Right.
didn't want to do that. There was a ton of stigma and social shame attached to that was highly motivating. And then their mothers taught them, look, this is when you peak, right? You're going to peak around 22, and after that your pool of eligible guys is going to go down because the best guys are already going to be taken. It was the motherly wisdom that was passed down. That was the advice my grandma got. She got married when she was 19 to a wonderful man that was the love of her life, and they spent many years together and raised their children together. And she had no regrets, and it never even occurred to her to like be hypergamous because she grew up knowing, well, what am I going to do? Get divorced at 40 and find someone better than the guy who picked me when I was 19? No, right? So we used to just teach women differently. We used to be realistic with them about how things work. And I think that's why the Bible says it's really tough. Young, beautiful girls don't tend to be that virtuous because they're young, beautiful girls. And a lot
Right.
of the stories of our female saints are young, beautiful girls who were virtuous
Exactly.
and wanted to keep their chastity and didn't want to marry pagans and things, and they were willing to become martyrs rather than do that. And
Right.
that's why I think they're saints. So
Saint Justine is one of them.
yeah.
St. Justine is one of them. Shout out to Mud, who gifted a Codal Crew membership while we were live. Thank you so much, Mud. God bless you, brother, for all your support. And he posted a comment that I want to, and he gifted a membership over on your page as well, Rachel.
Oh,
So shout
thanks,
out to
Mud.
Mud. And he made a comment that said, I'm 5'6", so I am in single digit desirability for 95% of women, and I live in a small town. I have no choice but to pursue a relationship with Christ. Well, there is
Well,
hope, Mud. There is
yeah.
hope, but certainly our eyes have to be on God for God to give us a godly woman.
Yeah, and for some people, God's providence for their life won't be family. It won't be marriage and family. That's going to happen, historically, it's happened more for men than women for all the reasons we just talked about. But, I think that the monastic revival we're seeing in the United States is a good thing for that reason. And I think especially for men, there's lots of purpose for you out there besides just a woman. So if you feel like that's what's going to be your life, I don't think that's a reason to be ashamed. I don't think you should be ashamed at all because men like Mud are the reason that, the world runs. You guys are the
Exactly.
ones that run the world, and you still deserve respect. If you're a good Christian man and you're doing all the right things, but women don't want to, for whatever reason, you don't find the right woman, that does not mean you're not valuable. And I think that's one of the things the red pill does well, is it tells men, hey,
Yeah.
you matter and you count, and your worth as a human is not based on what chicks find you attractive, right?
Right.
So
Absolutely. Shout out to Agent Orange, throws in $10 and says, my parents believe the alternative is to go their own way and start a house church. I've already realized orthodoxy is the way, but it's hard to see the stubbornness of the previous generations. And I totally agree with that. One, he hits on the problems of Protestant presuppositions and how they have overly saturated American culture in a negative, detrimental way. And that the boomers, let's just face it, have given a lot of terrible life advice to the younger generations.
yep.
And they were privileged. The boomers were the first generation with television. They were programmed, as we all are, through our media devices. Ours are now more mobile. Younger people are more on social media and YouTube, but they've given a lot of people terrible advice. And if you're one of them and you see it, at least your eyes are open now. But that's a real thing. That's why the boomer meme exists.
Yeah. Yeah, the house church stuff is I live in the rural Midwest where it's very deeply Protestant, but it tends to be like very salt of the earth, very patriotic, very conservative folks, and they
I'm all
do a
for
lot of
patriotism.
yeah. But I'm just saying they do a lot of this house church stuff. We
Right.
got cowboy church revivals out here. We got house churches. We actually Andrew and I are surrounded by Amish people in our neighborhood, so there's a lot of interesting, and we have some really bizarre little Protestant sects around us as well that have some really interesting beliefs. But yeah, it's really crazy how they. I don't like any of the other churches. I'll just start my own in my house, and I'll have a
Yeah,
house church, and then
that'll
they'll
solve
tell
it.
you that that's like, well, I'm being like the church of the first century because I have a house church. It's like, sir. No.
Right. And then Bruce Roberts, we already addressed this one, but I'll read it again. He threw in $10, says, "Don't fall into despair, brethren. I'm 5'8", black with a few extra pounds, and at my worst, still attracted an attractive woman. Before catechism, constantly improve, trust Christ, and you will be good." Amen to that. Thank you so much, Bruce Roberts, for the support. One came in over on your channel, the Raging Patriot 1776. And he said, "So where does a man that is lost and wants to come back to a base religion over what I had before as Catholic, sober 3 years now, and clean 15 years? Yes, help." This is on your channel, so I'll let you address the majority of it. But I would say go to an Orthodox church. I mean,
Mhm.
that's the Christ pill. That's the message. If you're a man and you want to find a true patriarchy, you want to find a tradition that is historical, you want to find a tradition that doesn't change with the whims of the modern times, it's the Orthodox Church. So as a man, I highly, highly recommend finding an Orthodox parish because you'll find other men that are on this exact same journey.
Yeah, I would say the same thing Patrick said, but also that little piece Patrick has said about, finding your purpose for yourself. And if you do that, women will come. I remember Andrew used to, when we were young, he was very popular with ladies. Okay. And guys would always be like, "What's your secret, bro? Like, how do you get these women just so obsessed with you?" Because he would have girls that were just like falling all over themselves and couldn't, he'd break up with them and they could never get over it, that kind of thing. And his friends would be like, "What is it, dude? Like, what's your magic sauce?" And he'd be like, "I just don't care about them. I just don't pay that much
It's
attention.
true.
He's like, "I'm just busy with my own stuff. I'm busy with what I'm doing. And if women want to come along, fine. But if they're not, then I don't care.
I
Like, I'm
think that's
not
great
focused on that."
advice.
So focus on yourself and your church and God's purpose for your life, because you're still here. If you've been sober and you cleaned up, you're
Glory
still
to
here
God
for
for that
something.
too.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome, and you're still here for something. So find out what that is and throw yourself into that. Go to it, go to the church. Um, you know, Begin to pray like an Orthodox Christian. Like I think that's the first big
Prayer is
step.
huge. Prayer is
Yeah.
huge.
It was the first big step for me because I prayed every day as a Protestant, but it's very different. It's like, "Jesus, thank you for the good stuff, and here's my wish list
Yeah,
and amen." Whereas when you learn how to kind of more formally pray and pray the prayers of the saints and things like that, I can't explain it to you, but it's so different, and your world will start changing. Your world will just start changing when you start to do Orthodox prayer. So do that. And if ladies want to come along, good. That's awesome. But if they don't sweat it.
yeah. That's great advice. Now, moving into guys, if you have any more comments or questions, feel free to send those in. We'll address all of them. I want to get over to the dono chat because the majority over on Streamlabs. And so looking at the dono chat, we got 4 super chats. Blue Skittle, shout out to Blue Skittle. Thank you so much, brother, for all your support. He throws in $5, no comment. Thank you, Blue Skittle. Anonymous super chatter throws in $5, and he says, or she says, I guess it could be, I just presume men, mostly my audience is men. given the degeneracy in our Western culture today, should the church be doing more to perhaps facilitate meetups or something similar between women and men of Orthodox faith with goal of helping Christians find their holy union? I think this is a good question, and I've seen there are some recent attempts at meetups. I think Ancient Faith Radio recently did one. Not a big fan of Ancient Faith myself, but I think this is something the church needs to address. I think for many clergy, because they are coming from an older generation, they don't really know the landscape of modern dating and what young men are actually dealing with. I was my recent stream I did on a different channel. I was talking with Father Michael Butler, and that's what I was laying out to him is I think the church really needs to address this issue more from the clergy, and they really need to come to a better understanding of what young men are dealing with, because it's not the 60s, it's not the 80s. This is a different
Right.
world.
It
And
is.
with OnlyFans and social media, I mean, it's different just from the year 2000 because social media wasn't at the rate that it is now. So
Yep.
this is a different world for young men, and the majority of converts are young men. And I think the clergy could absolutely begin to aid this process by, yeah, creating meetups. But number one, to even aid in the meetups, they need to know what we're dealing with so that they can also, as we've said, talk to the young women. Because I
Yeah.
think that's a point that really hasn't been addressed by the church is there is more conversation about the young men, but there's not a whole lot of conversation about the women that are coming into the church. And that is something that the church could do a lot better at, addressing that openly and then having meetups. I think that's a phenomenal thing to do, especially because Orthodoxy is such a small number in the United States. But what are your thoughts on the church's role in some of this problem?
Well, first of all, everybody should go to patristicfaith.com and keep an eye out for updates on the Montanica conference that's coming up at the end of June this year, because that's a really great place to go. And if you're ladies, we would love to have more
Yeah,
ladies come.
they need more ladies going, that's
We
for
had
sure.
more, they had more last year. I wasn't able to make it last year, but
I
they
was
had
there
more,
last year. I don't know if there was that much more.
just a couple
So,
more. I
yeah, I
heard
don't
it
know
was
if
more.
it still was a vast majority of young men,
Okay.
but
Well, what I would love is for some of the ladies maybe who watch me, follow me, get together as a girl group and go. Rent an
yeah,
Airbnb, drive out there if you can, fly out there if you need to. Go together as a girl group and experience the wonderful conference. But also, there's going to be a lot of young men there, so that's a good idea. But um, I really do think, yes, you're right. We focus a lot on the young men coming into the church, and this is bizarre too, because it's like there's all this moral panic about why are all the young men coming to, is it because they want to be political, are they right wingers? And it's like, first of all, relax, we want them all to come to the church, so you should not be having this attitude of, well, we need to make sure they're coming for the right reasons. Yes, but that's up to the priest at the parish. You don't need to be like
their spiritual
gatekeeping
father.
that.
Yep.
Yeah, you don't need to be gatekeeping that. But we don't talk about the women, and we don't talk about the young women in the church and what we tell them and what we teach them. We assume that, like, they're just going to be pious on their own. Like I said, everybody wants to assume that women are just put into the world as angelic, selfless, perfect beings, and that we only ever do anything wrong if we're spoiled by men. And I think that that's ignorant. We used to have the babushkas and the matushkas and the older ladies of the church passing down wisdom and kind of being the moral enforcers. Okay, like Jim Bob has a phrase he calls good Karening. When you're Karening in the appropriate way, right? Where the older women in the church would be like my grandma's mom, who would say, don't be riding the carousel till you're 30, girl. That is not going to be good for you. And that's not wise. You're going to screw yourself over. And here's why. And you explain it to them and you pass down your wisdom. You tell them about your mistakes. And this is something women don't like to do. I'm trying to break the cycle. You want to talk about your mistakes. You want to say, here's what I did when I was young and it was stupid. And here's where I went wrong. Don't do this. And hopefully a lot of them will listen, or if they don't, when they make that mistake, they'll remember your words and they'll go, "Ah, this is what she was talking about. This is where I need to correct." We do need to mentor young women more, because right now, like I said, it's a free for all. They
Yeah.
hit 18 and it's like, "I'm going to start my OnlyFans and I'm going to get my simp bucks and
College
I'm going."
courses tell them how to start their OnlyFans and build a business.
Yep, exactly. And that's what they're doing. And it's a totally wrong worldview that we give young women, and it's a huge part of the problem. So if the church could master kind of talking to these women, I think that would be really good. That would be a big help.
Yeah, I agree. Next super chat came in from Moldy Apple, throws in $11 and says, "Do you think there has ever been a time where women celebrated the murder of their young? That only probably makes this the most evil age." Well, I think certainly at no point in history was it happening at the scale it's happening now in the 21st century. And so, um, yeah, we live in a very degenerate, evil age. That's part of what I argued is the Christ pill, is recognizing that all of this is spiritual warfare. Again, that's part of what I would say one of my criticisms of the red pill and the shortcomings. Although, again, some people like Rolo say that's not the point of the red pill, but other people are certainly making prescriptions. But there is no transcendent, metaphysical, objective reality in which to address the things that they're highlighting in regards to contemporary dating. And so all of this is a spiritual warfare. So the things that they're describing in the inversion and the gynocentric world order, this isn't just evolution. This is a spiritual phenomenon. And so we need to uh, better combat that by, again, being warriors on in our own regard. So thank you so much, Moldy Apple. Is there anything you want to add to the evil age of offing their children?
Oh, we just did a whole live stream on that recently. So I would just say, if you want more on that, go back and look at the ritual unaliving of infants and unborn children stream that we did. And then I just want to tell my chat to chill a little bit. I got people like fighting in their hardcore, so I had to time a couple people out. Sorry. I'm virtuous Karening. That's what I just
There you go. Hey, put it into action.
yeah.
Next super chat came from Archibald McTitty Sprinkles. Very clever name. He said, "Can you and Rachel speak to the impact of grifters and red pill, Christ pill discussions?" Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. We briefly touched on that at the beginning, but it's a
Yeah.
problem on both sides. It's a problem on both sides. I'm often accused of it, but what does grifting mean? Grifting means you are selling something. There's a product, and you're selling something that the value is either not clear or it's not actually there. It doesn't just mean, like, people want to say grifting means everything. Like, they'll call me a grifter, they'll call Jay a grifter, they'll call, and everyone's a grifter. If you can make money on the internet, you're a grifter now. That's not what it is.
Right.
Grifting would be like you're selling coaching packages. You're like John Anthony is one of these people. He was a total phony, a total fraud. He had all these dating coaching packages that were really expensive, and he would tell everybody, "I've got like 1,300 body count." Like, I was like doing the math, and I was like, that's would have to be all he's done all day, every day for like the last 22 years of his life for that to be true
Yeah,
or
I doubt
something.
that.
Yeah, and then he said that a couple of them were trans, and then it all came unraveled. Yeah, it all came unraveled, and he got
All right, so
exposed.
he's gay. Yeah.
I don't know if I believe any of it. I think he was just making up wild stuff. So there's like those guys. Don't go buying some expensive like uh how to get in women's pants coaching packages. That's
Yeah.
stupid.
Well, and
Don't do it.
I would like to speak to it in regards to the Christian
Yeah,
sphere,
please do.
because I don't list myself as a coach. I do one-on-ones for people that want to have private conversations about whatever they want to talk about, and I certainly try my best to help men. But the I've seen a lot of people, even in the orthosphere, label themselves as men's coaches and stuff like this, and then you look at them and you're like, you're not in a position to be giving anybody coaching advice or spiritual advice or helping and this I would consider a form of grifting. And I would recommend, do try not to listen to men that you don't have genuine respect for in regards to that they're actually doing it themselves.
Right.
I've been seeing a lot, and it's so popular in the fitness sphere. Everybody's a
Yes.
fitness coach.
Everyone's a
Everybody, and
coach.
you look at them and you're like, dude, you have a below average physique.
Yeah.
And then they have a big following, and you're like, what? How is this happening? Are people that dumb? Like,
Yep.
unless a dude looks the way you want to look, why are you even talking to them and giving them money? But the same thing is occurring within the Christian sphere. A lot of these Christian men's coaches, and you look at it, you're like, dude, why are you coaching people? You got a lot that you need to work on. So I think the grifting thing, obviously the red pill, I'm not as involved in the red pill sphere, obviously, as I am in the Christian sphere, but there's a lot of grifting going on, and we need to make sure that whoever we're getting advice from, and that's why you need a spiritual father. Because that's
Yep.
true for me. If I've ever given somebody advice and it doesn't correlate with what your spiritual father says, well, then, that's why he's
Defer
there.
to them.
But
Yeah.
I would venture to say anything that I've talked with people that a priest would back me up on. And that's why, again, the Orthodox Church is important to have a patriarchal tradition that will back us and help us spiritually in this phenomenon.
Yeah, exactly. And uh the other grift that happens on the Christian side is people who have made their whole online identity like, I'm a Christian guy, I'm a Christian girl, look at me. And they're like leading Bible studies, or they're, let's cover the book of John today. And they don't even belong to a church.
Right.
Like they're not even in a church, but they're going to like interpret books of the Bible for you and give you their hot take. I've seen this a lot. In different online communities where it's like, I just joined, or this is the other one. I just became a Catholic yesterday. Now I'm going to start my online ministry. And we've had Orthodox guys do this. We've had Orthodox guys that have a history of going from, oh, I was a multi-level marketing coach, and then I became some kind of Arian, or I became, I went through a various heresy churches every 6 months, but then I became Orthodox and now I have a ministry. And it's like,
Oh
stay away from
gosh.
that stuff too.
Yeah, absolutely. Frankie D just sent another YouTube super chat. Frankie D, I'm going to address all your Streamlabs super chats. We're going to begin with the first one right now, and I'll come back to the one on YouTube. So the first one, Frankie D has had a lot of interesting stuff to say. Shout out to Frankie D. I appreciate Frankie for all the support he's given me. God bless you, brother. Thank you.
He's a
He,
real one.
he is a real one. He throws in $10 and says, bro, me and my wife were made catechumens today. Dude, glory to God. Excellent, Frankie D.
Yay!
Dude, I am so happy to hear that. That's wonderful, brother. I'm
Celebration.
genuinely excited to hear that. That's wonderful. And so he said, congratulations to both you guys. And he said, glory to God. Absolutely. Glory to God. May God bless you and Rachel as well. Between you and Jay and other ortho creators, I have learned so much about the faith. I have had great in real life Orthodox relationships as well, and I am very thankful. Well, Frankie D, thank you, brother. I really appreciate that. Glory to God that you and your wife are now catechumens. I'll speak on behalf of Jay as well. If me or Jay or anybody in the orthosphere has helped you, we are humbled, and that's wonderful. So we are excited for you, man. Glory to God. And we're humbled that our content could benefit you and your life in a positive way. So thank you so much, Frankie D. And then Keenan, shout out to Keenan Beats. Shout out to Keenan in the chat here.
Keenan, I keep telling Andrew that your name is not Kenyan, but it doesn't stick. He doesn't remember my birthday still, okay? So don't be offended. He always calls him Kenyan.
He's a Neanderthal. It's okay. Keenan throws in $5. Shout out to Keenan Beats. He says, I'll have you know, Pastor Joe Blow is a great guy. That was from when I was talking about Pastor Joe Blow on the street corner. Well, Keenan, I'm glad that you've built a relationship with Joe Blow and that you can reassure all of us that he's a great guy. But thank you, brother. Thanks for everything you do and all the support you've given the channel. I think regarding Andrew's inability to say his name, he says, I've accepted it.
Yeah. He doesn't know anyone's name, in case you haven't noticed. I'm surprised he remembers Patrick's name.
That's easy for him. He's Irish. But thank you so much, Keenan. God bless you, brother. Frankie D threw in another super chat of $5, said, I somewhat disagree. Let me clarify. I do not think men should be gluttonous and lazy. I can agree with that. However, living Orthodox put out a video, Love in Orthodoxy. Based on that, I think trying to appeal to the sensations of women by maintaining frame goes off the rail. Okay, well, let me speak to that. And Rachel, if you have any thoughts on that. Um, when we say maintaining frame, I think it can go off the rail, but if you're an Orthodox Christian, the frame is orthodoxy. So if you're doing it in a secular way, I pretty much agree with you, Frankie D. I think it can go off the rail. Um, but if it's in regards to your Orthodox faith, your purpose, and what your expectations are for a marriageable woman, I think that's actually a good thing. And I would assume you probably don't disagree either. So I actually don't think we disagree too much on here. But also, appealing to women should not be the way men try to validate their own identity. I think that's, again, if I had to put another X on the red pill, although, again, if you Rolo stuff actually highlights to not do this, but you hear
Yeah.
other red pill guys, and it almost seems like the whole thing is about your identity in the eyes of women. That
Yes.
is a feminist and a feminized form of masculinity. So your identity is one found in God, and the Imago Dei, you being made in the image of God. So, um, and then I've talked about this with Father Michael. Men are better judges of men than women are, and so the way I think a man goes about trying to find his identity and his frame is, what your skill sets are, where other men respect you at, your fraternal groups, like where do you meet your brothers at? Because we all have friends that aren't in the Orthodox Church, and they can be good people. So acquiring respect, honor, dignity from other men, I think that should be central to the frame. And anybody who's trying to appeal to women and the sensations of women, I agree with you, Frankie D. That absolutely goes off the rail, and that's never a recipe for success.
Yeah. Yeah, amen to all of that stuff that you just said. There was a lady in the chat that said something early that kind of relates to this that
Okay,
I
go ahead.
wanted to address, but she
Yeah.
was kind of salty, so she left. But
Oh,
when we said that, and this is the thing that always happens to me and to Patrick too, where it's like we're trying to explain complicated, nuanced things, and people don't always listen to what we say. They hear what they think we're talking about or what they think we mean, right? They're like, so what you're saying is, and she was like, well, if he's not going to show interest, then bye. And she was like, she just kind of like left the chat because she was kind of salty about it. But we're not saying like your husband should ignore you.
absolutely not. That's not
We're
what
not saying,
the Bible
no,
says.
no. And we're not saying, oh, just dismiss her needs or anything like
Absolutely
that.
not.
It's not what we're saying. We're just saying a man's life cannot revolve around the woman can't be the center of his universe that he
Yes.
just revolves around. Because number one, ladies, you don't actually want that. Some of you think you do. I promise that you don't, because you've had guys like that and you friend zoned them for a
Yep.
reason.
Yep.
You don't find them attractive because those kind of guys, they can't be the pillar in the wind for you. They can't like be the thing you hold on to when the wind is blowing and he's like your rock in life. He can't be your protector, and you can't respect him. If he worships you, you can't respect him. That's all we're saying. My husband is very attentive to my needs. Like oftentimes he surprises me because you guys know him. He sounds like this like salty old sea dog, right? Like this old like Marlboro man who's just like uh a certain way, but he's when he's just with me or if people attack me, oh my gosh, he's like so it's like he'll get very defensive and he's very protective of me. And anybody he thinks might be trying to take advantage of, he's going to get right in between me and that person and he's going to find out fast if that's the case. So like he's very attentive and he's always protective and he's always making sure I'm good.
Absolutely.
Are
And
you
that's what a
okay?
good man does.
Yeah, he's like, "Are you okay? Is everything fine? I just want to make sure
Exactly. Being
everything's good."
attentive and having your life revolve around a woman are totally,
Totally
totally
different.
different things.
Yeah, yeah, and
And
people just conflate so many of the things that we're talking about,
yeah,
but this is like you do have to hold the frame though, because if Andrew's life suddenly became about placating me, I'd be like, "Who are you even?" Like, and I wouldn't like it. I actually wouldn't like that. So there's a difference between getting some attention and having your needs met and the man's world revolving around you and you being the center of his universe. You don't want one of those guys who's like, "I'm going to self-delete if you ever leave me."
yeah.
You don't really
And
want
this is
that.
another thing I gotta say. I've seen this so often from these Orthodox accounts on X. every time a bad experience, they literally broadcast to the world that, oh, I got a date with a girl. Uh-oh, she's ghosted me again. Dude, shut
Yeah,
up.
I know.
Every time one girl shows a little bit of interest in you, don't post it on social media. That is
No.
weak. You look
And
like a
women
woman.
smell that. We smell that kind of desperation 50 miles away, and we will ghost you. I'm not saying that might sound mean, and I've had young men, like these types of like angrier young men, say that to me. They'll be like, "Well, you're just a feminist like the rest of them." And I'm like, "No, no, no. I'm not a feminist. I'm telling you that kind of behavior in men is very feminine and it's very weak, and it is repulsive to us. Our instinct is to we want a guy to put a baby in us who is going to be strong and fend off predators and protect us, okay? And if you're just like worshiping at our feet, we're like, why is he doing that? And it tells us he has nothing else going on.
Right? I
He has
see it
nothing else
all the
going on.
time on X. Oh my gosh, the cute girl at my parish, she said that she's gonna go to coffee hour with me. Bros, what do I do? Dude, shut up.
Yeah.
Shut up. You're not even gonna win with that mentality. Like, if you want questions, like message privately a man that you respect and maybe get some advice from him if you're genuinely worried. Do not post, as people are saying do not post your life on social media,
Yeah.
especially as a man.
Yeah.
Like if you're doing things and you're creating content, okay. If you're showing, positive aspects of your life, okay. But there is a real phenomenon in the ortho bros on X that they do everything they can to drive women away, and then they wonder why they can't get a girlfriend. It's like, stop posting about it publicly, dude. You're broadcasting to everybody that you for lack of a better word, are a loser in that regard. Now, maybe just with women, but don't broadcast your L's. Do not do
Also,
that.
stop simping. Did you hear me? Stop simping. It ruins the women. It's going to ruin everything for you. Simping is the bane of humanity. We wouldn't be dealing with any of these problems if it wasn't for simping. Stop simping, okay? Stop it.
Yep.
I will come to your house and flog you if I catch you simping. Stop it.
Next super chat came from our brother, Dr. Vagisil, and he throws in $1 and says, red pillars paradoxically need lots of blue pills because they are caught in sex hamster wheel of Satan. Interesting point. And that would highlight to the cyclical nature of their degeneracy and the advocacy by some of people for that. So point taken, Dr. Vagisil. Thank you. Frankie D throws in another super chat. He said, it seems to me that the messaging is that women do not need to repent of their pride. Men need to start lifting weights and become doctors, etc. This is an appeal to passionful appetite of women. I argued this recently. It is not submit if. That's a great point. Another great point. And
Sure
this
is.
highlights again the overinflated expectations of women. And I'll be honest, I think going and lifting weights is good for everybody. You don't need to be a bodybuilder, but just as a man, taking care of your body. If you're single, if you're married and you're in a committed relationship, okay, that's between you and your wife. But if you're single, why not do everything in your ability to be more attractive?
Mhm.
At the same time, I totally agree with this submit if. I see this all the time, and you can speak to this, and I want you to in regards to Orthodox circles that you've seen that these women they literally mock men for pornography, for their sexual appetites, and then they play into that on their own social media,
Mhm.
and then they talk about, well, I'll submit if, and it's like, what are you talking about? You're claiming to be Orthodox.
Yep. I've seen that. I mean, you see it everywhere, but you see Orthodox women do it and you're just like, at least I am. It's like, okay, we have patriarchs. We have patriarchates. We are a patriarchy, literally. If you come into orthodoxy as a woman thinking you're going to be Allie Beth Stuckey, I've got news for you. That's not going to work and it's not going to last. And hopefully you will be corrected very quickly because that's not what we're about. Like, we cover our head in church and we stay silent in the church. We don't teach the men. We don't preach to the men. We don't do any of that. We have our place. Our place is extremely important and we are needed in our place. You have no business dictating I will submit if. Okay, and you don't have to submit to the guy down the road. You don't have to submit to the random dude at your parish, but you do need to submit to your priest and to your bishop. Start with that. And then once you learn how to do that, if you want a husband, an Orthodox husband, yes, submission is part of the deal. It is. You don't get to pull this egalitarian nonsense in an Orthodox marriage. We don't even say vows in our marriage service, and the submission of the wife is mentioned 2 or 3 times. I went to a Orthodox wedding recently and kept the thing, and then I lost it, and I wanted to read it for people because it outlined that the woman is to submit to her husband in all things. It's right in the service, and we say that that's what we're going to do.
Right.
So as an Orthodox woman, for you to even have the attitude of like, well, I'll submit to my husband if he's doing everything I want. That is not how it works. And I've said this before, but there's something magical that happens when you're in a new marriage. Ladies who are about to get married or you're in a young marriage, listen up. If you begin to be more submissive than you're comfortable with, because trust me, your Western programming and your womanly instinct from the fall is going to kick in, and you're going to want to go, but why do we have to do it? I don't agree with it. Can't we just do it this way? I think that it should be this way. You're going to want to do that. Start practicing, because it's a skill you have to learn just like anything else. You have to deprogram all the Western nonsense that you've been programmed with since you were a baby. Go to my Substack and read some of my feminist deprogramming stuff I've written that will help you understand and see where you're programmed, where you didn't see it before. And practice submitting. Practice just not giving your husband a hard time when he says, we're going to make this decision. This is where we're going to go with things. This is what I'm going to do. And you go, okay. Even if on the inside you're screaming, but, just go, okay, honey. Start practicing that, because something magical happens when you do that as a wife. When you say, and your husband comes to you and he says, look, I'm going to take a risk with this investment, or I'm going to take a risk with my business. I've calculated, I've planned. This is what I think I need to do. There is a chance it won't work out, but this is the decision I'm making, and I need you to back me up on it. Even if you're nervous as hell, you need to go, I totally believe in you. I'm behind you 100%. If you do that, your man will suddenly turn into Superman, and he will suddenly become the most motivated and determined man you've ever seen in your life. And he will do things that neither you nor he knew he was capable of. It's like magic. Having a wife that like backs your play, even when there's some risk, because women are risk averse. We don't like that. We like cozy and we like predictable.
That's why they choose security over freedom in American
Every
politics.
time. But your husband is going to have to take some risks. If he's a business guy, if you want him to do great things, if he has potential, there's going to be risks he has to take to try to achieve that potential. If you can learn and practice backing him on that, even when it gives you a nervous feeling inside, and you just confidently say to him, you know what? Absolutely. I'm 100% behind you. Even if you don't fully feel that way, just watch the magic happen. Just watch what the man will do. And then you'll understand how important that is. You'll understand that your unconditional support of him in his masculine pursuits is super important. And it's crucial to your marriage. It's crucial to his success. And his success is crucial to your success and your kids' success. So it's a skill you got to practice, because we're just not born in that culture.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. Next super chat came in from Dr. Vagisil, throws in another $1 and says, red pills only use is for highlighting secular worldly problems to look for their spiritual roots and seek the solutions given by the church fathers, because they have shown intense spiritual discipline for us to emulate. Absolutely. That's kind of what we try to lay out today, is that the solutions, the prescriptions are in the church. And the red pill, for what it does right, is the descriptive part. It does describe the phenomenon, but if we want to solve the phenomenon, it's obviously in the church. It is all a spiritual battle. Next one comes in from Frankie D, throws another $5. Thank you so much, Frankie D. He says, I defended men in the comments, but now I'm going to defend some women. We say, hey, man, women need to lower their expectations. All true. But men, we also have inflated expectation of what kind of women we want due to social media. Maybe men need to take that 5 also. Interesting point. So we kind of hit on this. Frankie D's making about male expectations, and for some people, maybe they'll have to change maybe what their physical standards are to get the woman that's going to be loyal and support their masculinity and support their endeavors. That's where, again, this is an individual thing. So we can give you the hope and the Christ pill, but how that's going to work itself out is going to be
Yeah.
very individual between you and your relationship with God and what you're willing to accommodate, as well as with the other person. I will say this. One of the things that I've found frustrating with some of the young Orthodox men is they are looking for a wife, and then they go on a few dates and stuff. And I talk to them. I say, okay, so you talk to her about becoming Orthodox and what you're doing. Oh no, I didn't. We didn't get to that yet. What? What do you mean you didn't get to that? Like, at least my approach when I was trying to find a wife is, unless we see eye to eye on the big topics, I'm not interested. And
Yeah.
maybe we don't see eye to eye, but if you're willing to accommodate, because I'm not accommodating at least my faith. So if you're an Orthodox man and you're finding Protestant girls or Catholic girls or whatnot, and you're not addressing from the get-go, like, I think that is that's a positive way to go. As opposed to like this like soft maneuver of like, well, I want to build a relationship. This is, I think that again, not always, but I think it sets a precedent for a dangerous standard where you're already willing to compromise. If you're strong in your beliefs and you're strong in where you're going to go, those should be topics made immediately upon conversation to figure out if you guys are even going to work or not. So, and it also helps to show that you're not afraid to say no. Like, that is a positive thing. Some guys,
Yeah.
because of the lack of opportunity, are very afraid to say no to a woman that shows interest in them. And again, that's
Yeah.
something you'll have to navigate, but be very cautious of that. That if you're already afraid to say no, they can smell that, as you said. That is a sign of, not necessarily saying you're weak, but you need to be front and very straightforward about what you want and where you're going. And then if she's cool with that, now you've already got all that stuff out of the way. And she sees that you're a man of business and you're going somewhere. So, um, yeah, I agree with that. Do you have anything you want to say in regards to male standards? We already kind of hit that topic.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you covered it.
Okay. Next super chat, Frankie D again throws in $5. He says, for the young man, give that less attractive girl a chance. When I was a young man, I had a couple different options, but I wanted the hot girl and didn't see them, but they were decent women. Oh, talking about I didn't see them, the average woman in the room. Wife them up, man. They are diamonds in the rough. I agree with that.
True.
Again, it depends on your standards, but that's exactly what we need to do. We need to be focusing on marriages and families.
Yeah. Well, and like an average girl with a great personality.
And an average guy with a great personality. That's another thing. I
Yeah.
was talking to a guy that had the social awkwardness. I'm like, dude, when you're hanging out with us, you're pretty funny. Like, if you're a funny guy, that can go a long way. Like,
Yeah.
you see these comedians, like, again, that's Hollywood or whatever, but you see comedians and they have really attractive women. I'm not, again, this is the point of the comment, was to not always focus on the most attractive woman, but for a young man, you don't have to have, everything, checked out in a box. Your personality goes a long way. And if you're able to if you're confident, no matter where you're at on the physical scale of attractiveness, and you have a funny sense of humor and you can make
Yeah.
people laugh. And when you're around a group of people, you can almost be the sort of the guy that everybody wants to be around because everybody's having a good time. That goes a huge
It's
way.
super big. Yeah. It's huge. You see that. Yeah, I feel like you see that a lot. And yeah, it's just like, again, you're gonna marry the hot chick with the insufferable personality, and in 10 years, they're so entitled, they end up gaining a ton of weight and being like, now she's also a hefty pain in the butt, and now you have to deal with her forever. So it's like, looks aren't everything. That's
They're not
true.
everything.
No.
Next super chat comes from Joseph, throws in $3, says, "Hey man, are you with the St. Paisios Brotherhood? It's a great resource for men. It also offers ASA for men who struggle with porn." No, I'm not part of the St. Paisios Brotherhood. I'll look further into that. I'm aware that they're doing good work. And then there's also like the Order of St. George, I know is an Orthodox men's order. But yeah, I don't know. Certainly offering men tools to deal with the struggle with pornography is a good thing. As I said, the simping, that is a huge problem, and porn addiction leads to that phenomenon because again, you're going to be led by your sexual erotic desires in this process as opposed to the faith and the principles that you need to stand on. Okay. Josie from the church says St. Paisios Brotherhood is ran by Father Hans Jacobsy. Well, I'm a big fan of Father Hans Jacobsy, and I plan on having him on the show. Oh, and Father Michael Butler.
He's
Okay. Well, I'm
awesome.
I'm pretty close friends with Father Michael Butler, so I am not part of the St. Paisios Brotherhood, but Father Michael Butler and I planned on, and he's in Michigan. He's outside Detroit. We were talking again. This is early talks, but we're talking about maybe putting together a men's conference, if you will, potentially in the fall, Orthodox men. So it
Ooh.
may be through the St. Paisios Brotherhood. So maybe I'll be a part of that here pretty soon. I'm very open to it. I'm a big fan of Father Hans and Father Michael. So that's something that we're talking about in the near future. So thank you, Joey from the church. And then Jesse threw in $5 and says, "What is the role and value of a monastic calling, i.e., monks and nuns, in today's society?" So this is obviously an important point, and this is something that has been going around. We've been talking about in our think tank on my website for the premium members. Is the role of monasticism in the United States, especially when the Great Reset and the things that we expect to come are going to come, is Saint Ephraim, Elder Ephraim. I'm sorry, Elder Ephraim, who started so many monasteries, I think 20 plus in the United States, did that for the purpose of preserving Christian culture when the collapse comes. And if you look at the fall of Rome, anybody who's a history nerd knows that the Romans highlighted that monasticism was the place in which they were going to preserve their culture.
Yeah.
And so monasticism, I think, is going to be a huge, huge role moving into the future, because without monastics, you look at the countries that have high monastic, a high number of monks and nuns, i.e., like Serbia and Romania. Romania has a very high number of monasteries for the size of that country, and they are the most Christian country in the world. And
There's
that I
a
don't think
yeah.
is a coincidence there. So if we're going to want to make America more Christian, I think for some men their calling will be monasticism, and that's something to talk about with your spiritual father.
Yeah. That's why I kind of said I think the monastic revival that we're starting to see, I think it's going to play an important role because yeah, marriage is not the path for every single person, and certainly in the society that we're in right now, I think an increasing number of men and women. I would love to see more women become monastics because I mean, there's a lot of women who are falling into the trans movement because they aren't there's just some women that are not built as like sexual creatures and they're not interested in that sort of thing and they tend to be more tomboyish. I think they are great monastics and they're important and we need those women. They're like my daughters went to a retreat at a monastery with some nuns and they had like the greatest insights and they loved being there and the ladies were so great to them and it's like I would love to see more of that so that there's in places like Romania, there is this other option and it's very apparent, whereas here, a lot of people don't even know about it, haven't considered it because, again, Protestantism, they got rid of all that. We don't have monastics. So in America, it's very behind the rest of the world, but there is a teeny tiny monastery very close to me that's Romanian. And we have a little community of Romanian people that come there, and we've been there a few times, and they're very cool people. So I would love
Yeah.
to see more of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of monastics I know are great, actually traditionally masculine men.
Yeah.
It's not for, oh, these are the guys that couldn't get wives. No,
Right.
these are guys that their purpose, because they got in touch with their purpose was monasticism. They devoted their life
Yep.
to it, and God bless them, and I'm thankful that they have. Last super chat on Streamlabs comes from Hand Soap, throws in $10 and just says, great topic. Well, thank you very much, Hand Soap. Really appreciate that.
And soap.
And then we had a couple more coming over on YouTube. Frankie D throws in $5 again, and he said, I think everything but the church is a grift. I have found so much peace in the church, as have I. I don't need to save the West. I need to defeat my sin. Great comment there, and I totally agree with
Actually,
that.
that's how you save the West.
Yeah.
Men who think like that is how we save the West. So.
Amen. I totally agree with that point, Frankie D. Thank you again so much for the support tonight, my brother. And $10 came in from Antonio Castaneda, and he says, our Orthodox parishes are becoming beacons of hope and light for so many young families. I foresee a future of a very tightly knitted Orthodox community, church schools, and public schools. And I totally agree with that. Here in Indianapolis, we already have, I know one Orthodox parish now has school. I believe you can even go through high school there. There's not that many people, but you can basically get your degree through there. I know many my church, we've since the end of 2021 have had a massive influx. Almost everybody who's come is younger, and we've had some beautiful younger families join. And I agree. I think that's what's so hopeful is all the young people. The fact that all the young men are
Yeah.
coming. Like I had a conversation with some of the young guys at my church, and I told them, dude, it is my goal. I want to help you find wives. Because that's how our church flourishes. That's how it's ours. That it is ours in the future as long as we build our families. So I think it's very, very hopeful. And everybody I've talked to, every priest I've talked to is seeing young families and young people join at unprecedented levels.
That's something I would love to do in my older years is help develop church schools. I would love to do something like that.
We need that.
I hope the Lord gives me enough time that I can participate in those kind of things. So I would love to.
And then another super chat came in from our brother, Wicked Wally. Throws in $5. Shout out to Wicked Wally. God bless you, bro. He says, female AI is learning. I didn't ask Alexa how its day was first. Now, instead of turning on Spotify, it's crying in the bathroom.
Oh, no.
It's true. It's true. Thank you so much, Wicked Wally. God bless you, brother, for your support. Really appreciate you, my man. And then Well Emmanuel, shout out to Well Emmanuel, also a good ortho brother here in the community. And he says, thanks, great stream as usual. Well, thank you, Well Emmanuel. Really
Thanks, Well
appreciate your
Emmanuel.
membership for 11 months. He's been a Codal Crew member for 11 months. Thank you so much, Well Emmanuel, for your support, brother. I genuinely appreciate that. Thank you very much. And just double checking. Let me check the dono chat. I think that is everything.
I have one little dono chat. I have one
From who?
for $5 from Christian Petikov. He says, a small token came late tonight. I always admire your zeal and how you deal with your detractors and haters. Love your honesty and everything you do. Thank you, and may God bless all your endeavors. Well, I really appreciate that. I really,
Excellent.
truly
That
do.
didn't show
Thank you
up on
so
my
much.
side, so I'm glad you pointed that out.
Yeah,
I
that
don't
was
see
just
that.
my dono chat. From
Oh,
my
your dono chat. I'm sorry. Yeah, because your YouTube's pop up. I was like, I didn't see it, but okay.
Yeah.
Chat. Well, excellent.
Yeah.
Any final comments you want to make before hopping off here to sort of summarize or add to our discussion? I feel like we hit a lot of the points that I wanted to address, and so I'm appreciative for you for coming on again and having another fantastic stream, another 3-hour stream. I don't
I
think we
know.
ever not get to around the 3-hour mark, but
That's what you get for having Chatty Cathy on your stream, Patrick.
well, that's what I get for having a woman on.
That's right. That's right. It's woman prattle for 3 hours. Just to sum it up, I would say, for the Christian side, you know, I don't blame you if you don't want to spend hours diving into red pill content. Okay.
Agreed.
That's part of why we did this stream because We know a lot of you aren't going to do that, and you've probably only seen the worst parts of it. And we should mention, there is a federal effort to infiltrate the red pill sphere, and there are some suspicious actors trying to blame it on all kinds of weird things. And so things are not always what they seem online. That's number one. Number two, there are real human beings and good folks. Like I mentioned, Aaron Clary, who has some really valuable books. My book would not exist without him. He's the one who told me to write it. He's the one who encouraged me. He said, I'm so happy to help out like a traditional mom oriented lady in this sphere because we need them, and they like basically don't exist, right? So there's good people with helpful advice on the red pill side. Are there grifters and people we completely disagree with? And do they sometimes prescribe things that we definitely don't agree with? Yes, absolutely. But we are not Amish. We don't have breakaway utopian communities where we can hide out and live in our little Orthodox bubble and say that's a secular problem. We don't have to worry about intersexual dynamics because we're Orthodox. We can't do that. We are called to be in the world, but not of the world. And we are supposed to be trying to help create a culture, and the one that we're living in right now is on the verge of collapse. It's very serious. We have extremely low birth rates. People are barely even getting married anymore, and I care about the future of children who are being born into these situations. I want to do anything I can, and you might think, oh, you're never going to make it, Rachel, you're never going to make an impact, but like I said, I get messages all the time from people who are choosing family and motherhood and homeschooling and orthodoxy and things like this because things are so bad and they're only going to get worse. So I think we have to be more open-minded to non-orthodox people and non-orthodox causes and talk to them. There are fellow human beings. They're the mission field. And one thing we can do better as Orthodox is reach out to those people and have dialogue with them and talk to them and give them the Christ pill as an answer to a lot of these worldly problems that everybody's dealing with. So
Right. That's how I look at the red pill. It's fertile ground because we have the prescription, they have a diagnosis. We agree on much of the diagnosis. I'm sure there's many points of contention, but I think having conversations with people in these other circles is only beneficial for the church. And that's really what the function of us non-clergy Orthodox people is to engage deeper into the culture and sort of be those tentacles of the church that can slowly bring people into the full reality of the body of Christ, which is the Orthodox Church. So I think that pretty much sums it up. Rachel, thank you so very much. Guys, smash that like for everybody who has not liked. Make sure you share and subscribe to both of our channels. Rachel is linked in the title, and I can put a link in the video description. I know you're streaming to your channel right now, so shout out to everybody watching over on your channel. God bless you all as well. And I wish you the absolute best in everything you're doing, as that last Dono chat said. And I look forward to the next one. I'm sure we'll do another stream here in the near future. We tend to do quite a few, and they're always good.
Yeah, and I'm gonna see you in like 2 weeks anyway.
I know. I'm gonna be with the Wilsons in Michigan, watching both of them get dunked 3 times in cold water and coming out as new people.
That's right. That's right. So always a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me on again. I love having these chats, and it's just always a good time for me. So thanks.
Well, thank you. With that being said, guys, I will be back most likely Tuesday with a sponsor stream. We'll be going over the work of Henry Corbin and his weird spiritual perennialism and his theology of the imagination. So I will see you all then. As always, until next time, God bless.